Izuku awakens to an unexpected quirk at an unexpected time. Why does he have this power? With the ability to give and take quirks, what will the boy do with it? How will it impact those around him? But more importantly, is he willing to share? Deku x Momo, OP Deku. Hey guys, it's me, Amaterasu, back with another series, All for None by Luke Blackiston, aka, What if Deku can take quirks? Also, I just want to say I'll probably stop uploading videos, or at least as much as I used to, due to the fact that my views are going astronomically down, and I kind of need to start saving my money for a trip, so instead of just sitting here continuing to spend $30 to $40 on getting these videos uploading, that being my voice generator, and Canva Premium. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and without further ado, roll the intro.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Boys, my wheels got in my bag and I got all my feels. I'm getting this paper, I'm stacking a meal. I'm with your hoe in the house on the hills. Yeah. I'ma keep it real, at the sacrifice to try to get my bands up. Shorty wanna fuck with me, she see me on the camera. She said she in love with me, but really I can't stand her. She just want part of this life cause she see me on the ground.
Chapter 1. At the young age of 4, Izuku Midoriya discovered the world was not fair, quirkless, bullied and kicked into the dirt more times than he could count. He was Deku, the worthless quirkless loser. Nobody respected him, and his best friend had turned into the worst of his bullies. To say his outlook on life was good would have been a lie, to say the least. Then again, at the age of 10, Izuku relearned this lesson. After all, he did indeed have a quirk, one he had never quite expected to have. After all, what's stronger than being able to give and take quirks in a world that was based off of them? Izuku Midoriya's story began after standing up to his friend for the first time. The boy in question had turned into what could only be described as a villain. He flaunted his power over others by beating them into the ground with his quirk, Explosion. One day, after being shoved back by his childhood tormentor, Izuku felt it first, then saw it. A string coming from Bakugo, he could sense it and he felt compelled to pull, the very essence of body screaming to take the thing and rip it from Bakugo, and so he did. The weird thing was that Bakugo stopped after Izuku had ripped the thing from him. He was sitting still, just staring at his hands. Izuku was confused, to say the least. He had never seen this behavior from Bakugo before. Breaking him from his reverie, his ex-friend screamed, "Deku, what did you do?" Bakugo roared before starting to stomp towards the boy. Izuku decided now was the time to flee, so he turned and ran. He didn't stop until he was all the way back home. It wasn't until Izuku had reached the door to stop and consider what he'd done. Izuku could feel the string inside of him, and as if on instinct his body told him to pull it, so he did, and once he had, tiny sparks had started to appear in his hands. So that's what he did, Izuku realized. He had stolen Bakugo's quirk. His quirk lets him steal quirks. The irony of the situation was not lost on the boy. He was no longer a worthless, weak Deku. He was strong, and Bakugo was the Deku now. He finally brought himself out of his thoughts and opened the door, to see his mother in the kitchen cooking. Calling out to her, he said, Mom, look at my quirk." Izuku created tiny sparks from his hands while he said that, showing her his new quirk. The face on the woman went from joy to confusion to shock at the sight. "Izuku, isn't that Katsuki's quirk? Or do you just happen to have the same one, dear?" Inko said, quite surprised, as the odds of the latter seemed astronomically low, since neither her nor her husband had a quirk even remotely similar to that. "That's not my real quirk, Mom. My real quirk lets me steal quirks. I took Bakugo so he couldn't bully people anymore," Izuku explained. The house phone began to ring after her son finished telling her about his quirk, but she was sure she knew who was calling right now. "Izuku, we need to talk about this. Stealing from others is wrong, even if they were being bullies," she sighed, grabbing the phone, noticing the name on caller ID. "Hey Mistuki, I already know what you're calling about. Izuku just told me about what happened. Yeah, your son stole my brat's quirk. Inko, I don't think I need to say how scary of a quirk your son has. Katsuki has been crying ever since he got home. Do you know if Midoriya can return quirks, or is it permanent? If he can Can you make him give it back to Katsuki please? Mitsuki stated in a manner that sounded more defeated than actually angry. Yeah, I was just about to talk to him about it. I'll figure out how exactly Izuku's quirk works before you get over here. Inko sighed again, realizing this was going to be a long night. Thanks Inko, we'll be right over, Mitsuki said as she hung up. Izuku, please tell me everything that happened and what you know about your quirk. We need to figure out if you can give quirks back before the Bakugos get here. Inko explained to her child. Izuku paused before responding. I can sense strings? I just pulled on it and I took it from Bakugo. I have to physically touch someone, I think. As for giving it back, I have no idea if I can, mama, but I don't want to give it back to him. He's just going to start abusing people with it again. He's a bully, mom. Bullies shouldn't have powers if they are going to misuse them. Midoriya explained to his mother. Izuku, you aren't the law, you don't get to decide who does and doesn't get to have quirks. Please don't fight me on this. The woman was done with this conversation. At first Izuku didn't want to give it back, but the more he thought about the more he realized that she was right. Alright mom, I'll give it back, but I want to set some rules before I do. I want him to stop being a bully at the very least. Izuku finally relented. 30 minutes passed before there was a knock at the door. Assuming it to be the Bakugos, Inko went to the door before opening it. She was greeted with the sight of Masaru looking at Izuku with fear, Mitsuki looking bored more than anything but their son Katsuki. He just looked dead. He must be crushed without a quirk, she realized. I'm sorry we had to meet like this, but please come in. I have tea for all of you if you want some, Inko said while ushering them in and onto the couch. Masaru was notably giving Izuku a wide berth, Inko noticed. Mitsuki took a sip of her tea before speaking. While I do wish we were meeting under different circumstances, we do need to take care of this, Inko. Izuku, can you tell me what exactly happened earlier today? Izuku began twirling his thumbs together. Well, Bakugo was threatening me with his quirk, and then when he shoved me I saw a string coming from Bakugo, so I pulled on it and suddenly I had his quirk. That's all that happened really. Izuku put his head down after. Mitsuki looked at her son before continuing. Did you attack Izuku, Katsuki? Yeah, I attacked that stupid Deku. He thought he could be a hero without a quirk. It was for his own good. Now he has that evil villain's quirk that only lets him take from others. Bakugo cringed from hearing the boy say his name earlier and not Kachan for some reason that hurt him inside, but then the fire returned. You hear that, Deku? You're a fucking villain, you hear me? You're a fucking freak with a freak's quirk. Everyone in the room froze from the sheer venom dripping from the boy's speech. The language excluded. Mitsuki was speechless hearing her son talk like that. She hit him on the head. Katsuki, never speak like that again, and your quirk isn't evil. Izuku, what happened sounds like it was an accident. Can you try giving it back please? Izuku was still trying to collapse in on himself to get away from Bakugo, but he heard his name spoken, so he knew he couldn't avoid this conversation. I can try, but I don't want to get exploded anymore. Can you promise to stop using it on me, Bakugo? Mitsuki looked at her son after a large amount of time passed without him speaking. Well, Katsuki, no fucking way I'm going to put down this villain before he has the chance to steal even more quirks. Bakugo was glaring daggers into Izuku. Katsuki. She slapped her son again. I will not tolerate you threatening to kill Izuku. What the hell is wrong with you? Bakugo was rubbing his face from the slap. Look what his fucking quirk can do. He could take the quirk of everyone in here by just touching them. Izuku started crying after hearing what his ex-friend said. He knew they were never going to be friends again, but he wanted to kill me. I don't want to give it back if he's going to do that. Izuku was rubbing his eyes. Inko just looked between the two children before stealing her gaze and looking at her friend's ex-son. Katsuki, if you touch my child, I swear nothing will stop me from getting you. The gaze horrified the boy. He'd never seen Inko look like that. Masaru finally decided to step in. Alright everyone, let's please calm down. We're getting too heated here. Let's take a minute and calm down. A tense silence passed before Mitsuki spoke. Alright, it's clear things have become strained between the two of you, but Katsuki, you will promise to stop hurting Izuku? I don't care about his quirk, do I make myself clear? Bakugo looked to the side. Fine, old hag. Deku, give me my fucking quirk back, I won't use it on you. Izuku shakily held his hand out, but as he did a thought occurred to him. Something so wrong, so out of character he can't believe he was thinking it. This was his quirk now, and there was no way Bakugo was going to listen to his mother. Plus his mother had a point, they had no way of knowing if Izuku could even give quirks back, though he was pretty certain that he could. On top of that, Bakugo just threatened to murder him if he got his quirk back. I'm not taking that risk if I don't have to. Besides, this was payback for the years of torment Bakugo inflicted on Izuku. I don't know if I can even give it back, but I can try. Take my hand, be Bakugo. They sat like this for 10 minutes while Izuku pretended to give his quirk back. On the other hand, Izuku definitely knew he could return quirks now. After he initiated physical contact with Bakugo, he felt the ability to push the string back into the boy if he wanted to. "I'm so sorry," Izuku stammered out. "I don't think I can do it." Katsuki just deflated at those words. Izuku had never seen the boy look so pale, but after what he did and said today alone, he felt he more than deserved it. Hopefully with some time without a quirk and he'll learn to be a better person, although Izuku did feel a little guilty about it, but he figured he could just hold on to it for a few weeks before giving it back. It was Mitsuki's turn to chime in. "Alright, well, it seems we won't be getting anywhere today, but please keep trying to find a way to give his quirk back, Izuku." You know, it was everything to Katsuki, and without it, well, just look at him. Izuku cringed after seeing the look on Bakugo's face. Maybe he should just give it back now. No, this will be a good learning experience for him, Izuku finally decided. "It's definitely not because I want to keep it or anything," he told himself. The Bakugo stood to leave, but Katsuki was just staring at the floor. After a little more time passed and his parents realized he was in shock, Masaru grabbed his hand and led Katsuki from the house. Mitsuki just said a sad goodbye to Inko before they left. Inko looked at her child in various levels of intrigue and fear, realizing just what her son was capable of. "Izuku, you must keep your quirk a secret, honey. Imagine what people will think of you if they found out you can permanently rob them of their quirk by simply touching them. Your quirk is extraordinary, Izuku, but it's also incredibly horrifying, and when dealing with things like that, it's best to handle it with a level of caution. Alright, dear? I will love you regardless, but either way it's time for bed, Izuku." All Izuku did was say "I love you" in kind and walk off to bed, but little did they know that this wouldn't be kept secret for very long. The next morning, as Izuku made it to the school next morning, but for some reason everyone was giving him hushed looks and whispering behind his back. He was used to bullying and being made fun of, but this was very different from the usual. Confused, he walked over to one of his classmates in order to ask them what was going on. The person in question just looked at Izuku in fear and screamed, running away, begging him to not steal his quirk. "Oh, Bakugo told everyone about my quirk, I guess. Well, that's fun. That being said, getting left alone is probably better than getting bullied, at least." Other than that though, he realized his mother was right. Izuku had a villainous quirk, and if he were being honest with himself, he had been using it like a villain. Then again, Bakugo literally threatened to kill me if I gave him his quirk back, so maybe I'm doing the right thing? He was broken from his thoughts when the intercom blared to life. "Izuku Midoriya to the principal's office. Izuku Midoriya to the principal's office." The line cut after that announcement. Izuku just sighed in defeat and started walking towards the principal's office. Once he reached the office of the principal, the secretary ushered him into the room of the principal's almost immediately. Upon looking into the room, he saw two chairs sitting in front of the principal's desk, one empty, the other occupied by a familiar spiky blonde-haired child with a shit-eating grin on his face. Principal Nakihara, on the other hand, looked livid. "Midoriya, it has come to my attention that an incident occurred at the playground yesterday. Your quirk came in, that's good, but then you used it to somehow steal Bakugo's quirk? Return his quirk at once, Midoriya." The man slammed his hands on the desk when said that last part. If Izuku were being honest, he fucking hated this man. He's covered Bakugo's abuses for the entirety of the time he was here just because he was their star pupil. Hell, the man often blamed Izuku for being the one to start the fight if Bakugo got caught in the act. In his mind, this man was worse than Bakugo. He actively encouraged abuse in his school and Izuku hated it. However, being wise enough to not voice his opinion, Izuku just sighed before speaking. "Sir, I already had this talk with the Bakugos. I don't know if I can return a quirk once I take it, and even if I could, I have no idea how to do that." The principal slammed his hands on the desk again. "Then find a way, Midoriya. If his quirk isn't returned within 10 minutes, I will be calling the police. You have robbed the future of one of our best and brightest, and if you cannot fix it, then I swear to God I will bring the vengeance of the law down upon you." Izuku called it, of course. Had this man ever once went to bat for him? No, he just scuffed everything that Bakugo did under the rug, and now that I made Bakugo the Deku, he's lashing out at me for it. Izuku had two choices now: give it back and they realize he was lying, or double down and have the police called. Since there was no way Izuku could get in trouble for this, Izuku went with the second option. He was literally quirkless until yesterday, and honestly today had just proven his point even further. Bakugo Katsuki does not deserve having a quirk. He's a violent bully that manipulates the people around him and uses his power to stand over other them while he kicks them into the dirt. He's a villain, nothing more, nothing less, and now that his favorite toy was taken, he's throwing a temper tantrum just because he can. Izuku just sighed again. "I can try again, sir, but I really have no idea if I can do this." Izuku then went and faked another attempt at giving the boy's quirk back, and after 10 minutes of him trying true to his word, the principal called the police. Izuku wasn't sure what the principal thought this was going to accomplish though. Izuku is 10 years old, for crying out loud. So there Izuku sat in an office for around an hour, trapped between two people he really would rather not be trapped between. When the door finally opened, Izuku cheered silently. It revealed two people, one absolutely tall skeleton of a man with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a really tacky yellow suit. The other was a much more normal-looking man with black hair and a detective's badge. It was a strange pairing to say the least. The detective spoke first. "Hello, my name is Detective Naomasa Tsukauchi," he said as he flashed his badge. "We came because of the incident of a child stealing another child's quirk. Which of these two is the one who took the quirk?" The principal responded by pointing at Izuku. "May we borrow your office, Principal Nakihara? We would like to get the boy's statement in private, if that's all right with you." The principal stood ushering himself and Bakugo out of the room. The detective sat down in the chair opposite Izuku and began asking the boy questions. "So Midoriya, is it true that you took that boy's quirk?" "Yes, it is, but it wasn't on purpose, I swear. In fact, I was considered quirkless until yesterday," Izuku explained to the man. All of that pinged as a truth which greatly relieved the detective. At least the boy didn't do this on purpose and he only has his hands on one extra quirk. That being said, this child either possesses a quirk similar to All for One or All for One is involved in this somehow. Both options didn't make the man happy. "Alright, that's fine then. Can you give the quirk back, Midoriya?" "I don't know if I can. I've only had the quirk for a day, not even actually." The boy lied to the police officer. Well, that's not good, Tsukuchi realized. "Midoriya, do you want to take a guess at what my quirk called lie detector does?" The man leveled a gaze at the boy. Oh, Izuku was fucked. Satisfied by the look on the boy's face, Tsukuchi continued. "Things are going to get serious if you don't tell me why you won't return the boy's quirk, Midoriya. I'm sorry for lying, but please believe me, I had good intentions in not giving it back," Izuku stammered out. Strangely enough, that wasn't a lie. The boy genuinely believed he was doing the right thing by not giving it back, and that somehow worried Tsukuchi more than if it had been a lie. Was the boy delusional or something? "The person I took it from was a bully. He used his explosion quirk to hurt people. I was one of his main victims. I just wanted to keep him from hurting people. I want to be a hero after all. Plus I figured I would return it in a few weeks at the most. Just enough time to make him get used to being quirkless like the person he used to beat daily. Also, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I feel kind of possessive of the quirk. It's like I hunger for it. I've never felt anything like that before." By the end of it, the detective was both equal parts relieved and appalled. At least this boy wanted to be a hero and not use his quirk to become the next Dark Lord or something. "Izuku, while every single thing you just said was true, and I applaud your bravery in standing up to a bully. This compulsion, can you fight it?" the man asked the scared child in front of him. Izuku nodded. "Yes, but it's kind of hard. Like when you told me what your quirk does, part of me wanted to take it. I'm kind of scared of this feeling, if I'm being honest." For the first time in the entire conversation, the skeleton man spoke. "My name is Yagi Toshinori, young Midoriya. I would like to ask you a few questions. The main one being, why do you want to be a hero?" Izuku paused as he thought for a bit. "I really just want to save people with a smile like All Might. He's my favorite hero." Yagi Toshinori winced as his name was brought up, and he looked over at Tsukuchi to see a thumbs up indicating that the boy did not lie to him. "That is commendable, young Midoriya, but what you did was akin to vigilantism the way you described it. You took the law into your own hands to deal with a threat and decided that the other boy should not have a quirk. Young Midoriya, you are not the law. You are not even an adult yet. You are a 10-year-old child with a very, very strong quirk." The man scolded the child. "I know, but he threatened to kill me if I gave it back. He called a monster that needed to be put down. I was scared." Izuku shook in fear. Both men exchanged a look. Tsukuchi confirmed it to be true. Toshinori had a face of sheer rage. "The bullying was that bad? I swear I will look into this, young Midoriya, but you will have to return the quirk. I promise that other boy won't hurt you anymore." That being said, as the incident was the result of an accident, there will be no formal charges pressed, at least for you. Please do not let this incident occur again, as next time we can't explain it away as a mere accident. Izuku leveled the boy with a gaze that made it clear repeat offenses would not end in a similar manner. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Now that he was out of immediate danger, his curiosity returned. Sir, I can kind of see quirks now. They look like strings with unique characteristics that I can pull on to take them. Why do you have 7 quirks? Also, why do they look so weird? They're all wispy and ghosty, kind of like they aren't even really there." the boy asked the skeleton, to which Toshinori coughed blood in sheer surprise. He gave a look to Tsukuchi and decided that this boy needed to now, since he will likely be targeted by him in the future because of his quirk. All Might was pretty certain that he had killed the bastard, but they were never able to find the body to confirm his death. Hopefully it was just one of his followers dragging off the body to bury it, but deep down part of him knows that it wasn't true. "Sir, are you okay? You just coughed blood." Izuku grabbed a napkin from the desk and panically handed it to the man. "It is simply my old injury flaring up, do not worry yourself about it." "Alright, young Midoriya, as there is a high chance that you will be involved in this in the future, I am going to tell you something. You must swear not to reveal anything I am about to say, do you understand? The boy gulped in response and then nodded. Toshinori buffed up, appearing in his All Might form. Young Midoriya, my quirk is called One for All. It is a sacred torch passed down through the generations, and I am its 8th user. The quirk is 2 different quirks combined, although it appears there may be remnants of the others in the quirk based off of what you just said. Anyway, the first is the quirk to stockpile power, which is why One for All gets stronger with each generation, and the second is the ability to pass itself on to another person. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you all this, my boy? Well, it is because those 2 quirks were combined by another's quirk, one who can give and take quirks. Sound familiar? That man is the world's greatest evil. He's always hidden himself in the shadows, manipulating actions from the shadows, and he has been around for over 200 years now. You get it right? The ability to just take quirks as one pleases, a quirk to stop aging perhaps? This man has a love for power and uses his abilities to take and control, although I finally defeated him 1 year prior, which is where I got this injury of mine, my boy. I'm sure you understand why we were so worried when we first came in here. Finishing his story, All Might deflated back into his true form. Izuku couldn't believe his eyes. He had been talking to All Might this whole time, and they were just trying to make sure they didn't have another Lord of Darkness on their hands. It finally clicked for him just how dangerous his quirk was. All Might, there's a question I need to ask. Can I be a hero with this quirk? A villain's quirk? All Might just laughed. Boy, no quirk is villainous. Quirks are simply tools to be used, and with yours I'd say you could become one of the best heroes of all time using it. His idol believed in him? Izuku was openly weeping now, and he had no intentions of hiding it. Finally someone believed in him. Young Midoriya, this was an enlightening conversation, but what if I said I had a proposition for you? How would you like to be trained by me? And as it so happens, I have the perfect way for you to use your quirk completely legally, and it would be beneficial to the police, provided you follow through and actually return young Bakugo's quirk. After hearing that, Izuku couldn't contain himself. He ran out the door, slapped Bakugo's hand, and ran back into the room screaming yes at the top of his lungs. This was the origin of the pro-hero All for None. Chapter 2. It was the day following Izuku's meeting with All Might. To say his life changed drastically in the last 24 hours would be an understatement. Bakugo got punished for the first time after Tsukuchi talked to the principal about comments that the boy had made. That was the first piece of good news. Second, he was about to be personally trained by the #1 hero All Might as idol. Izuku couldn't believe his luck. Funnily enough, Izuku had been expelled by the principal, but he's never been happier. Izuku honestly didn't care about that shithole anyway. Every person at that school had been awful to him. Plus, All Might mentioned he would handle my schooling himself, so Izuku knew it'd be fine regardless. On top of that, the entire school had been threatened by All Might. If they spoke of me or my quirk, they would be sued for spilling a government secret, which Izuku couldn't believe his quirk counted as that, but I guess the original All for One was as well, so it only made sense. Izuku hadn't been able to sleep a wink, but he was still absolutely beaming. With a skip in his step, he put his shoes on and nearly ran out the door. All Might had asked Izuku to meet him at Dagoba Beach, and there was no way he would let the man down or be late. The smile had dwindled a little when Izuku arrived at the beach in question. Was all of this a prank? Cause I'm pretty sure this is a garbage dump. He had arrived at exactly 5:59 a.m. 1 minute before All Might had told Izuku to meet him there, and Izuku could see head nor tail of the man. That was until a yellow flash jumped down in front of the green-haired child. Izuku assumed the man had been hiding on the top of one of the piles of garbage, but that honestly didn't matter because now the #1 hero stood before him. It hadn't been a prank after all. Izuku smiled to himself. It's all right now. Why? Because I am here. All Might exclaimed, doing his signature catchphrase and then not so signature, deflating into a shriveled husk of a man and coughing out blood. Izuku grew pale at the sight. Are you okay, All Might? All Might simply replied, I'm alright, my boy. It has been a year since my injury and I am more than accustomed to it by this point. Anyway, how did you sleep, young Midoriya? Not very well, honestly. I was too excited to sleep. I mean, training with you? People would kill in order to have this chance. Izuku replied. Just prove yourself to me, my boy, and you'll have no need to repay me. You have already proven yourself once by returning that bully's quirk. All Might replied, but noticed Midoriya looking rather sheepishly at him. All Might, I need to ask a question that's been really eating at me. Saying nothing, All Might gestured for the boy to go on. Did you offer to train me only because you're worried I'll be the next All for One? I don't know. I don't want you to be training me because you're afraid of me, I guess. Izuku couldn't look the man in the eyes while he said this. All Might paused for a second before responding, no, my boy, you have nothing in common with that vile evil. I had no doubt you would become a hero all your own, but I wish to ease the process as much as possible since as it stands you are basically quirkless, and we need to find you a source of quirks, my boy. While I am slightly hesitant to give you more power, it is, as I said, it is not the quirk that makes one evil, What if I went around destroying buildings and cratering people? Suddenly would I have a villainous quirk? Midoriya nodding along but secretly very glad. Now as for actually helping you with obtaining quirks, it's actually quite simple really. We're going to have you take the quirks of criminals, death row inmates or those with life sentences. In this way you are both helping society by removing the quirks of dangerous people who should not have such tools, while also providing you with tools of your own. However, I would recommend picking one quirk in particular to be your actual quirk, my boy. Izuku was confused. Didn't you say it was bad that I did that literally yesterday, All Might? Ah yes, but it was that very same idea that inspired me to create my own version of it. Keeping Bakugo's quirk from him in order to help society is wrong, but why is that? Midoriya shook his head, not understanding. No idea, All Might. Please call me Toshinori in this form, young Midoriya, but anyway. The difference, my boy, is that while cruel and a bully, young Bakugo is not an actual criminal yet, but murderers? Rapists? Serial killers? These are all people locked up for committing heinous evil crimes, and society would be better off if they did not have any sword or power or quirk. You can even give them a chance to reintegrate into society by removing their quirk, and if they turn over a new leaf you can return the quirk to them. It's quite ingenious if I do say so myself. A win-win for everybody involved. We sate your quirk's hunger so we don't have to worry about you lashing out. Villains are given a chance, and society itself is safer. All Might finished his speech and Izuku was in awe that his idea could be used in such a manner. So when do we start? The boy asked. Well, young Midoriya, as you do need a quirk to hide your own safely. I have gone ahead and picked out a relatively safe one for you to start with. If you are free today after school I can pick you up and we can drive to the location. I have Detective Tsukuchi waiting for us. I won't spoil the surprise of the quirk you'll be getting as I believe it'll be more fun this way. However, you are going to have to prove to me that you can be trusted, as I will not be giving you any more quirks for a while. Think of it as a trial run. The person in question is set to be released in 4 years. If you can go that long taking no other quirks and giving his quirk back at the end of the trial run, it will become a weekly thing. In the meantime, to sate your quirk we will have you take your mother's quirk, then give it back. Does this sound agreeable to you, young Midoriya? The boy understood how big of a risk All Might was taking for him. Toshinori truly believed in him and Izuku would never let the man down. Yes sir, Izuku said resolutely. Although first, there is something I wish to test out, young Midoriya. Can you try taking my quirk? All for One was unable to, and I wished to see if your quirk functions similarly to his. Izuku merely nodded and tried to pull at the strings. The wispy things just kept twisting themselves out of his grasp over and over again. After 10 minutes of not being able to take it, Izuku gave up. So it really is the same quirk? Young Midoriya, I must ask, who are your parents? Izuku paused for a moment, not wanting to divulge his family situation, but relented. My father works overseas. His quirk lets him breathe fire. I haven't seen him since I was 4. He left after I was diagnosed quirkless. He hasn't called my mom once in all that time. Or if he has, she's kept it from me. He still sends us money every month though. My mother on the other hand can pull small objects to herself. Honestly, I have no idea why I have All for One. All Might paused in contemplation a moment before responding again. You could perhaps be a great descendant of All for One. It's an amazing quirk. In over 200 years no one has any quirk even remotely similar to it. Maybe you were simply lucky in some gene and you let you acquire his quirk. Or it could have been a random mutation. Such things happen from time to time, but since we have no way to tell, let's not dwell on it. Alright then, now we train. The first thing we will be building is your endurance, then when you are older we can begin your real training. We're going for a run, young Midoriya. Oh, and I forgot to mention I need to keep you close as part of our deal, so I had to transfer you to a new school district. It's a very good private school. One that can be trusted with our secrets. I will be funding your schooling from now on, and before you worry about the money, do remember I am the #1 hero. I have more money than I could care to do with. Consider it a gift from me for investing in the next symbol of peace. Even though I do not intend to pass my quirk on to you, you will be great regardless, my boy. Izuku started crying. Really, this was the best. All Might was the best. He knew he would need to find a new school, and All Might went ahead and did it for him. Yes sir, I won't let you down. However, what should I tell my mom? Tell her the truth, my boy. The #1 hero is training you to become the best and that you're a worthy investment. Izuku broke down even more. Geez kid, you could stand to cry less, you know? Izuku threw himself at All Might and started hugging the gaunt skeleton of a man. Toshinori wouldn't admit it, but he already cared for the boy. Toshinori ended up driving Izuku to his new school. He was kind of surprised the #1 drove such a shitty car, but then again I guess it worked as let the man remain incognito. After all, who was going to guess that the #1 hero drove a beat-up old station wagon? All Might handed him a backpack halfway through the drive. Confused, Izuku opened it, finding it had a ton of school supplies in it and one of his hero analysis books, number 10 to be exact. I knew you were going to need supplies, as you would likely not have the required materials for this school. All Might stated matter-of-factly. And oh, why don't you open the first page of that book, my boy? Izuku was confused but did as he was told, and it was signed by All Might. He couldn't believe how much his life changed in the span of a day. Izuku was truly blessed. After a good 30-minute drive they came within viewing distance of the school. Izuku was shocked. The school was absolutely massive and he realized that he was now in the rich part of town. Izuku imagined the price to go to this school was astronomical. The golden plaque outside the school read Same Private Academy. He thought the name sounded familiar but he wasn't 100% certain on that. Izuku and All Might, in his skeletal form, walked up to the gates. All Might hit the comms button next to the gate before they opened, allowing the two entry. Apparently you needed a keycard to get in normally. Izuku was shocked at the level of security being employed by this school, but he thought, I guess that's just how rich people do things. Especially when you can be ransomed off for ridiculous amounts of money, Izuku thought to himself darkly. Finally inside, All Might dropped Izuku off at the teacher's lounge where he met his homeroom teacher, a woman with jet black hair and a very female office worker kind of vibe going on. She introduced herself as Ms. Yaoyorozu, which was a mouthful to say at the least. Apparently Izuku was going to be in the same class as her daughter was in and that she hoped they would get along, as her daughter was kind of a loner due to previous situations she had been through. Izuku just nodded and said he would do his best. Once Izuku finally got to the room he was forced to introduce himself and he managed to royally fuck that up. When Izuku stammered out a name that sounded nothing like his own and a bunch of the students laughed at him for it. Izuku having extremely embarrassing himself in the span of literally 5 seconds. The day went from being amazing to awful as one particularly loud blonde kid with blue eyes shouted about how students of this supreme academy ought to be able to handle himself in a public setting. Izuku just ignored the guy and went to seat where he finally noticed what must have been Ms. Yaoyorozu's daughter because she looked like a carbon copy of their teacher, just aged down a lot. Thankfully the girl was one of the few people in the room not laughing at him. Yaoyorozu? Spoke. Don't worry about him, he's an absolute buffoon. Rich people that, best class of people that. He looks down on everyone. The girl spit out that last bit. She apparently had no like for this boy. Izuku was a bit surprised at first that a girl was willing to talk to him since none ever had before. Oh well, thanks? Izuku let the end of that drag out. Momo Yaoyorozu, the jerk's name is Monoma. What about you? The girl noticed that the small scared green-haired child in front of her did not resemble the wealthy elite at all and she briefly wondered how he got into the school. Izuku Midoriya, it's nice to meet you, Yaoyorozu. The boy beamed at her. Well, he seemed nice enough, she thought. Likewise, the rest of the day passed uneventfully, that is until lunch. Izuku had just procured his favorite katsudon, before looking around the cafeteria. Izuku saw Yaoyorozu by herself and he decided that she seemed nice enough, so he went to go sit down with her. Hello Yaoyorozu, do you mind if I sit here? Izuku noticed everyone staring at him like he was an idiot. The girl simply shrugged. He seemed innocent enough, then again so did everybody else. You may. Thanks, it's super hard joining in the middle of the year when everyone already has their friend circles. Izuku rubbed the back of his head, getting kinda weirded out by the fact the cafeteria had gone nearly silent. Izuku could feel the stares boring into the back of his head. Doing his best to ignore them. So what's your quirk, Yaoyorozu? The girl visibly shook when Izuku asked that. He backpedaled immediately. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was a personal thing. You don't have to tell me. The girl looked like she was deliberating something before finally responding. No, it's fine, my quirk is called creation. I can make any non-organic material as long as I know the chemical makeup and I have enough lipids to generate the item in question. Izuku watched her make a small metal rod appear from her hand. Izuku froze. That was the single coolest quirk he had ever heard of. Izuku felt the familiar hunger in his chest, but he shut that down as soon as it appeared. Holy shit, that's amazing, Yaoyorozu. There are so many ways to use that. Do you mind if I ask some questions? Izuku was about to be lost in his world, but then he realized people were still staring at him and he could ignore it no longer. Actually, instead, Yaoyorozu, why are they all staring at me? He whispered to the girl. It's because of me, most likely. The last guy who tried to sit next to me I kicked in the crotch. Yaoyorozu looked pained as she said that. Oh, do I need to worry? Everyone around him was still staring and it was getting unnerving. That has yet to be seen, Midoriya. So tell me, why did you transfer here from out of nowhere, in the middle of the semester? The girl then shot a look to everyone in the cafeteria. They all slowly but surely returned to their own conversations. Oh well, I kinda got bullied a lot. It wasn't safe for me there. Izuku was hoping he didn't sound that pathetic. Yaoyorozu looked puzzled. Weird, who would hurt someone who seems so innocent? It'd be like kicking a puppy. Oh well, it just kinda happened. I tried to stand up for another kid and I refused to fight back, so they just decided to use me as a punching bag instead. God, please don't let this girl think Hess a loser too. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Midoriya. I'll do my best to make sure no one here does anything like that. Yaoyorozu gave him a look of nonchalance. Thanks, Yaoyorozu. So why did you kick that guy in the dick? Izuku watched as Yaoyorozu sputtered out milk while giggling. Izuku was confused. He didn't think he'd said anything funny. Yaoyorozu looked at the confused face on Midoriya for a moment before swallowing what milk she still had left and answered. I knew it. You aren't part of the upper class, are you? We wouldn't be caught dead using any language as crass as that, and it's the second time you've done so. Oh, I see. Is there anything else I should know? Izuku blushed a bit, clearly out of his depth. The girl just laughed. No offense, Midoriya, but the etiquette they teach us takes years to learn. Besides, I like you more this way. It's way more refreshing talking to someone who isn't so stuffy all the time. Also, if you wanted to know why I kicked him in the dick. He was acting like a complete fool. He came over and attempted to court me. His advances were unwelcome to say the least. Izuku was quickly learning to not get on Yaoyorozu's bad side, but he had a bit of an idea. Is the commoner already being a bad influence on the young miss? We wouldn't want them to corrupt such a noble young lady. Izuku drew out his haughtiest impression. Thankfully, his horrid impression of nobility only seemed to make her laugh more. Momo finally managed to recover from laughing. Well, if you're going to act like that, I may at least give you a few tips. With utensils, you start from the outside and move in. As for why we have 10 utensils, that's because nobility was stupid. It was at that moment Izuku realized he was going to like it here. Izuku was sitting in the passenger seat of All Might's shitty station wagon wondering where they were going today. As it turns out, Izuku was going to be having his mind blown a lot today. Besides talking to a girl for the first time in years, he was being taken to Tartarus, the Tartarus. Izuku was pretty certain you had to convicted of least a felony if not outright murder to get landed in here. Wait a minute, Izuku realized. What if it all was a lie and All Might's just tossing him in here? No, Therese, no way All Might would do that to him. That meant whoever's quirk Izuku was taking must have done some really bad things. All Might wasn't joking when they were going to be using his quirk to better society, and in some ways he was already acting like a hero. After the fifth security check and the constant questioning of why a 10-year-old child was with the number one hero, they found Tsukuchi waiting for them outside an interrogation room. Tsukuchi just gave the pair a nod and greeted them. So how are we doing this? Izuku asked inquisitively. Detective Tsukuchi responded dryly. The person inside is responsible for second-degree murder and illegal quirk usage. Even if the quirk wasn't an offensive one, it still counts. They swear it was unintentional, but there was evidence to prove otherwise. Since his crime was relatively light compared to the others staying here, as well as having a more appropriate quirk, he was chosen for this test. I doubt you have heard of the villain, as they were relatively unknown, with no priors and no other crimes. They didn't even earn a villain name. He is set to be released in 4 years, having served 16 of his 20-year sentence. Only if he remains obedient though, at which time you will return the quirk. Tsukuchi paused, taking a breath before continuing. We have chosen this one specifically for multiple reasons. Returning of a quirk after you become attached to it, its relative harmlessness, and finally ease of use. For the next 4 years this will be your quirk. Are you ready, Midoriya? Izuku merely nodded. Good. He is bound and gagged to protect your identity. Just walk in and take it as soon as you are ready. The detective held the door open for them and motioned for them to enter. Izuku saw a man in the standard orange jumpsuit used by most prisons, with a black bag over his head and cuffs on his hands. Izuku walked up and hesitantly raised his hand toward the person. The detective then looked at All Might, then back to the child. Tsukuchi was admittedly uneasy with this whole setup. He really didn't think loading up a potential new all-for-one with more and more powerful quirks was a good idea, but he had to trust All Might on this. Tsukuchi did, however, have to admit being able to permanently remove the quirks of inmates would make transporting them so much easier, and hopefully with this arrangement the boy is less likely to become the next all-for-one. Just go ahead and do it. The detective trying to encourage the boy. Whenever you are ready, my boy. All Might gave the boy a heads up. Izuku finally touched the handcuffed man on the shoulder, and that was that. Izuku felt the new quirk flow into him. Izuku was briefly registering pain as he felt his eyes change, and when he looked back towards the hero and detective duo, they shuddered for a second. Toshinori walked over before putting his hand on Izuku. My boy, are you alright? Your eyes changed. He looked at Tsukuchi. I thought you said it would be harmless and easy to use, not change his eye color and hurt the boy. Tsukuchi realized his error. Izuku, are you alright? I didn't realize the reason the man's eyes looked the way they did was because of his quirk. Izuku just winced as he opened his eyes tentatively. Everything felt more alive, so to speak. He could see so much more, and while it was disorienting at first, he was adapting quickly. Realizing the other two were worried about him, I'm fine, thank you, Detective and All Might. I was just having trouble adjusting to it at first. Wait, what did you say about my eyes? Tsukuchi just sheepishly pulled out his phone, turning on the camera app and handing it to Izuku. The greenette looked on in shock. His eyes had turned completely black, no irises, just black sclera. It was kind of unsettling if you were being honest. How are we supposed to hide this? Eye color doesn't just change overnight, Izuku shouted while panicking. Well, we can fix that, and it's my fault, so I'll front the cost. We will just get you some Halloween lenses to return your eyes to their natural color. The detective said apologetically. Well, that's fine then, I guess. So can we talk somewhere more privately? Izuku asked, pointing at the prisoner. Don't worry, he cannot hear a word we're saying, but sure, let's go to a different room to talk about this, Tsukuchi said, guiding them from the room. As they left, a prison guard came in and took the villain away. They simply moved to the next interrogation room over before continuing. Well, I'd to apologize again, Izuku, the detective said sheepishly. I'll be more careful in my quirk selection in the future. Don't worry, this won't happen again. So tell me, how are the eyes? The quirk was called Ultra Sight. It lets the user change between 6 different visions. Apparently there is some strain on your eyes if you use one of the enhanced visions for too long, but other than that it is quite safe. In case you were wondering, the 6 different visions are thermal, radiation, night, zoom, black light, and a form of X-ray vision that lets you see through walls, but it apparently only lets you see yellow silhouettes of living things to about 30 feet out. All in all, it's a very versatile quirk. It should be perfect for you to practice with. Tsukuchi finished his brief explanation, completely unaware of what was about to occur due to the information dump he had just dropped on Midoriya. Izuku paused for just a second before exploding into a torrent of incomprehensible words. Heat sakula can use this so much in Devon thaw inotoko mak worketh so much versatility. For example, does it work like regular night vision? Meningitis doesn't work in complete darkness. Can he change a sensitivity off light? How for does zoom lit? See what a dose thermal look like? All Might being absolutely blown away by the sight before his eyes, he briefly wondered if his love of quirks is a natural thing, or is it because of his quirks yearning for more quirks? Either way, Toshinori needed this to stop. Midoriya, my boy, calm yourself. Can you even breathe? Izuku stopped his muttering and meekly apologized. I'm sorry, quirks just really excite me, you know? There's so much you can do with them. All Might nodded. I can understand. It's like gaining a new part of yourself, I suppose, but do remember, as of right now, that's a temporary loan. If the man messes up further, it may become permanent. As it stands, you'll only have that quirk until high school at UA, where we can reveal the full function of your quirk. That reminds me. Surprise! Izuku froze when All Might handed him a letter, and on it were the 2 golden letters UA. Izuku paused once more before turning his gaze to his mentor. There's no way this is what I think it is, right? Just go ahead and open it, my boy. Izuku did, and it was a recommendation letter to UA signed by All Might and the principal of UA. If Izuku wanted, he was already accepted. He didn't even have to take the recommendation exam. In fact, it is encouraged that he doesn't due to the nature of his quirk. The principal does wish to meet up with Izuku before he can actually enroll at the school to learn about him and his personality firsthand. Honestly though, it was more of a formality than anything. For all intensive purposes, he has been accepted into UA at the age of 10. Izuku can feel just how badly the school/government don't want to let him become a villain. It's as if they're saying, we'll do whatever you want to help, just don't turn into something evil. Which kind of soured Izuku's feelings of accomplishment, but he decided to just say fuck it and roll with it. If they are going to give me privileges, might as well make use of them. The boy jumped forward, pulling the number 1 into an intense embrace, thanking the man for everything he's done for him. Izuku returned home later with the pair of contact lenses Tsukuchi had gotten for him in hand. Izuku sauntered into the living room looking for his mother. He wanted to show her his new eyes in order to let her know it's all going to be okay now. Izuku hadn't gotten the chance to tell her everything that happened after all. Mom, I'm back. The quirk stealer called into the house. His mother appeared and pulled him into a hug. Honey, I got a call from All Might's secretary about him taking you on as his successor. I'm so proud of you, honey, you're going to do great. Oh, what happened to your eyes, dear? Inko stopped speaking, only staring deep into the black abyss that were her son's eyes now. It's my trial quirk. Izuku responded brightly. I can see all kinds of things now. Through the walls, in the dark, great distances, I can even see heat signatures. It's an amazing quirk. Inko was a little shocked. She hadn't expected her son to be given another quirk so soon. But after her son explained why, she realized why it had happened so fast. Izuku needed to have a quirk to hide his original. Did All Might get it for you? Inko asked. Yeah, I'm already using my quirk to help people, Mom, it's great. I took the quirk of a murderer so he can't use it to hurt people anymore. Oh, and on top of that, I've already been accepted into UA, I just have to meet the principal first. Izuku explained to his mother. Inko did not like that her son was using the quirk of a known murderer, but she guessed it was fine since All Might himself had set it up. Oh, Izu, I'm so proud of you. She nuzzled into him. In honor of your first quirk, we're having katsudon tonight, honey. Izuku just shut down. This is literally the best day of his life, no questions asked. After he finished dinner and went to bed, Izuku lay in bed staring up at the ceiling thinking. Alright Izuku, we just gotta go 4 years without stealing a quirk, get caught using any additional quirks he is given, keep up my training with All Might, study my ass off, impress one of the most terrifying beings on this planet, and overall just don't fuck something up. Shouldn't be too hard, the greenette thought to himself, and he drifted off happily to sleep. Chapter 3. 2 years have passed since the blessing that is All Might has entered Izuku's life, and the boy's never been happier. The man has easily done more for him than anyone else has. Izuku wouldn't say it to the man's face, but Izuku is starting to see him like a father figure, much more so than his real father. If Izuku could even give that waste of space that title. The quirk giver's constant endurance training had made him such a good runner. Izuku has a real friend now, and he even finally figured out what he wanted to do for his hero career. The life Izuku had before All Might entered were night and day, so when the man gave Izuku a last-minute text to meet with him at Dagoba Beach in the middle of the night, Izuku didn't hesitate. Izuku threw his shoes on and ran out of the house. Izuku's eyes began humming as they shifted to night vision. This way Izuku could travel quickly, but more importantly safe on his way to the beach. After all, the boy didn't want to get caught by some villain or a homeless person along the way, but he did want to get to the beach as quickly as possible. When Izuku finally stumbled upon the dump of a beach that forever changed his life, he easily spotted All Might after turning off night vision and turning on thermal. The boy quickly walked up to All Might, announcing his presence so as to not startle the man. Toshinori, the gaunt man, turned and gave a simple smile. Young Midoriya, it is good to see you, even though I suppose I saw you for our run this morning. There have been some developments, my boy. All Might's face turned sour. Although it is earlier than expected, you are needed to return those eyes this weekend. The man in question got out of his 20-year sentence 2 years early for being on good behavior. I know it was always going to be this way, but hey, on the bright side, we can start having you obtain more quirks sooner rather than later. In addition, we will no longer need to have you keep taking your mother's quirk. Toshinori looked rather disappointed by the news for some reason. However, Izuku could only see this as positive news. The boy already knew he would lose the eyes, but now he can start getting so much more. Isn't this good news, All Might? It means we can start earlier than intended. Izuku was puzzled to say the least. True it is, but I figured you would take the news worse. I could tell how happy those eyes made you, but if you are not saddened by it, then I have no reason to be either, young Midoriya. All Might said after re-inflating into his hero form. If you are okay with it, then I will schedule the meeting the same way we did the first time on this upcoming Saturday, but it won't be all sad, my boy. After all, we can immediately get you a new quirk, Toshinori said, flashing his trademark All Might smile before deflating. I'll even tell you what, you get to pick this one, my boy. I'll have Tsukuchi make a list for you. That reminds me, did you ever figure out why the quirk was so much weaker for you than it was for the original user? All Might asked. The boy tilted his head. I had a few theories, but I'll need more quirks to test it out to get a final verdict on that. My most likely theory is that my body isn't suited for the quirk, and so it's worse for me than it was for the original owner. After all, they had their entire lives to adapt to the quirk, and I only had it for 2 years. I have a feeling that if I have a quirk for long enough, my body will become just as suited to it as the original owner. This is probably especially true for mutation quirks like Ultra Sight. I'm essentially giving my body another limb, a foreign entity. Most people's bodies would reject that. The fact that mine doesn't is already a blessing in disguise. Plus, I don't think it'll take as long for non-mutation quirks, but like I said, this was all just a guess anyway. Izuku threw his hands up dismissively. By the way, how's your search for a successor going? All Might paled. He had truthfully been putting it off as he really didn't want to stop being the symbol of peace, but he knew he would have to eventually. It's going. I know I need to hurry up and find another successor. After all, I'm down to 5 hours each day. Yagi paused. You would have been perfect, you know that, my boy? Are you sure you truly don't want it? Izuku just shook his head. I've already told you I've been blessed with the world's strongest quirk. I don't need that kind of power, even if it would have been kind of poetic for all for one and one for all reuniting to become one quirk again. I just think that the saying absolute power corrupts absolutely holds some merit. If I become that powerful, I would basically be a god, and I don't want that kind of responsibility. I've been thinking about what kind of hero I want to be, and I decided I'm going to be an underground hero. It's much better suited to keeping my quirk secret. Even though the world will know about my quirk one day, I'd like to avoid there being a face to my quirk, you know? Imagine how annoying it would be if the world knew both who I was and what my quirk was. I'd be stalked everywhere. People would beg and or worship me to give them quirks, and I'd honestly rather avoid that. All Might looked disappointed by the answer, but ultimately he agreed. Well, my boy, just know you would have been great, and I still want your blessing for who we give my quirk to. He smiled back at the boy. Alright, I've kept you long enough. I will see you tomorrow at noon. I'll be swinging by in my car, make sure you're ready my boy. By the next morning Izuku had received a list of death row or life sentence inmates, all with powerful quirks. Said list was rather short, with there only being 3 people listed on it, and Izuku was only going to get one to become his first official quirk, but that was fine with him. The first was from a mass murderer by the name of Moonfish. He had like 15 life sentences, apparently avoiding the death penalty due to mental insanity. He had slaughtered, cannibalized, and ripped his victims to shreds with his super teeth. This quirk seemed very strong, but ultimately very just wrong. He knew villainous quirks weren't a thing due to All Might, but he also didn't want this quirk that had literally been used to rip people to shreds, so this one is a no-go. The second was a quirk that let him control any fire within a 60 feet radius. It had been used by the criminal nicknamed Combustion. The man had apparently used the quirk to block the exits of buildings after he set them ablaze. Apparently the man had a burning desire to listen to the screams of the dying and damned, at least according to the psychological profile written on this sheet. Izuku couldn't understand the appeal himself. Listening to people begging to die while they were slowly cooked alive was not something he was into. At the very least this one was much less off, since the number 2 hero was a fire user himself. The third and final quirk option was probably the best of the bunch. It was called Jetstream. The person who had it could produce blasts of air from their hands that reached over 200 miles per hour. The user had apparently been using it to blast around, stealing and murdering. Apparently the quirk was much weaker until the user had taken the drug trigger and gone on some crazy joyride, slaughtering and causing general chaos. She was caught during that non-stop rampage, so she wasn't a serial murderer like the other 2, but she had clearly just hit a point in life where she said fuck it and went out with a bang. What was that song? Better to burn out than fade away. Either way Izuku was going to take this one. Mobility and power. It was a very versatile quirk. All that's left for Izuku is to wait for All Might to arrive. It was around 11:30, so it shouldn't be much longer. Izuku's mom meanwhile was nervously pacing back and forth, understandably worried about her son going into a prison. Mom, it'll be okay. I've been there before and All Might will be with me, Izuku said, doing his best to give a convincing smile. I know honey, but any mother would be worried for her child walking into a maximum security prison. She looked like she was about to start crying, but before she could Izuku just hugged her, whispering how everything would be okay and he would have All Might with him. His mother thankfully calmed down before the waterworks started. Alright, just please be safe. I will mom, I love you, Izuku said that as he walked out the house and into the waiting car of the number 1 hero. We need to stop meeting like this, Toshinori-san. Izuku quipped. PSSH my boy, I don't know what you mean, he chuckled, smiling back. So have you decided which one you will be taking? You will only be getting one after all. Yes I have, I'll be taking Jetstream. The teeth one scares me and fire is just too destructive. I'd rather have the versatility and safety of Jetstream. Izuku replied. Toshinori paused while thinking and stroking his chin. Yes, that does make sense, but are you sure you don't want all of them? Is that an option? I mean I would if I could, but I feel like I'm still on the training wheels and they don't trust me enough. Izuku mused. I'll just do what I'm told for now, and once I've proven myself I'll be more demanding. Beaming with that damn smile he got whenever the boy thought about quirks. If it's any consolation, you've proven yourself to me so many times over my boy. All Might said thoughtfully. Just keep being yourself and they'll warm up to you. They both decided to spend the rest of the car ride in companionable silence. The second trip to Tartarus was quite like the first, a bunch of questionings and stops where both All Might in his buff form and a small child walked behind him. They found Detective Tsukuchi by the gate this time instead of by the interrogation room. It seemed like he was standing there in order to escort them in. Greetings, I hope you're both doing well. Tsukuchi smiled at the pair. Are you ready to return the quirk, Izuku? He looked to the boy as he asked. Yes, sir. Even if it's a bit sudden I don't mind, I already knew I'd lose it at some point. Izuku tried to give his best determined look. The detective noticed that his quirk told him the boy was telling the truth and he was greatly relieved. Maybe this boy will turn out as good as it seemed like he would. Good, follow me then. It will be the same setup as last time. You are simply going to go and give the quirk and walk out. Does that sound good? Izuku simply nodded, following behind the man, and they soon reached the same interrogation room they used last time. The detective threw the door open and held it that way for the boy to enter. Izuku, for all his credit, simply walked back over to the figure in an orange jumpsuit. He noticed along the way that their build and skin color had changed slightly. Must just be prison life, Izuku thought. Izuku continued walking up to the man and pumped their quirk back into them. The person in question began twitching and freaking out, but the spasms only lasted for a brief few seconds and the figure readjusted to having their old quirk back. Izuku kind of felt bad about doing that, considering he knew exactly how it felt. Especially since he was currently in the process of readjusting to having his old eyes back. It felt like a part of him left. It made him sad, empty, like a lost limb willingly given. Tsukuchi just stood with a smirk. He was impressed the boy showed zero hesitation giving up the quirk. Tsukuchi knew they all had made the right choice right then and there. He strode into the room. "Congrats, you've passed the test," the detective said. Izuku, for all his credit, just looked confused. Sir, what test?" "Your final test. All Might has been vouching for you all this time and you've finally proven it. You are worthy of becoming a hero. You were so ready, so able to just toss aside a power that we quite frankly had no legal way to take back or punish you for wanting to keep it. There aren't exactly any laws about the theft of a quirk and you were given express permission by a pro to use your quirk as well. So we had quite literally no legal standing as to prevent you from just saying I'm keeping the quirk. But if I'm being honest, I'm glad you didn't." Tsukuchi strode over and removed the bag over the prisoner's head, and then he removed the bindings on his arms and plugs in his ears. "May I introduce you to the police commissioner, Kenji Tsurigame." Izuku was blown away. Had he just gave the police commissioner a quirk? Sure enough, on the face of the dog head before him, Izuku saw the same black voidless empty eyes that Izuku had minutes before. "I'm still confused. I know this was a test, but I'd thought it was a test already?" The police commissioner spoke. "Well, you see, we had to be doubly sure. By forcing this choice on you out of nowhere and making you give up something you were promised to have for longer, it would have made more sense for you to lash out and complain, and never once did you do so. I am impressed at your strength of will, even though, as you put it, your quirks call to you. You want to have them, but you were so ready, so able to give them up when asked. This was our final test. Congratulations, Izuku Midoriya, you have passed, and here is your reward. Everything. Please take your eyes back first though. They are very uncomfortable for me when combined with my other senses." Izuku went to take the eyes back, feeling the initial pain recede and the familiar humming return, still not quite understanding what exactly he meant by everything. "Sir, what do you mean by everything?" Kenji spoke. "If you refused to return it, it would be the end. If you hesitated to return it, you would still get the quirk you asked for, but by showing you can overpower your desires, you can have all 3 quirks that were listed as options. It's as simple as that. Oh, and I have one other surprise." The dog-headed man reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "It's a provisional license, but a special one. You can only act when directly told to do so, otherwise you technically would be breaking the law by using your quirk. I'm letting the first time slide as it was All Might who instructed you to act, but from now on it will not matter what hero tells you to act. That being said, this is more of a technicality than anything, but it's a step forward. Congratulations, Midoriya, you have proven a level of self-sacrifice, control, and many other qualities a hero would need. But sir, what happened to the man who I took Ultra Sight from? Doesn't he still need these eyes back?" Izuku was reeling from the news that was being dropped on him. "Humph," the dogman said. "I would think not. He is currently going to spend the rest of his life in jail." The man in question assaulted and murdered another inmate with a shiv he created out of a toothbrush after said inmate called him a quirkless reject. Izuku felt kind of bad about that, since he's the reason the man didn't have a quirk, but he'd been called a quirkless reject so many times and he'd never killed anyone over it. "That happened about a year ago. We apologize for not informing you, Midoriya, but we wanted the test to move forward as normally as possible, and congratulations, you've passed with flying colors." "Congratulations, you've earned it," All Might said, grinning at his protege. Izuku in his dumbstruck state didn't even realize that this was why All Might had looked so uncomfortable the night before. Izuku was being led from interrogation room to interrogation room, taking quirks as he went, but after the second quirk something started to feel wrong. Figuring it would pass momentarily, he proceeded to take Moonfish's quirk. Instead of the pain passing, it intensified greatly. Izuku's head felt positively on fire. He wasn't sure what was wrong, but it was like a migraine from hell. People around started taking notice, but Izuku didn't care. He just felt so wrong. He just wanted it to stop. The only solace Izuku had was that the pain was so great it was making him pass out. The last thing Izuku saw was the worried look of his skeleton mentor as he blacked out. The first thing Izuku noticed was rhythmic beeping. The second, the color of the ceiling was now bright white, a large contrast compared to dull gray he remembers from before. The third is the massive splitting headache occurring right now. The colors start to form coherent images. Izuku can hear the grayed out voices of those around him freaking out. He hears static and he then blurrily passes once more. Izuku awakens in a black void. At first there is nothing, but slowly as life comes into focus, Izuku notices he's not alone. There are 4 strings in here, all twirling and spinning as they intertwined with a black one that looked like a claw. Izuku reached for the one in the middle and it beckoned to his hand, flowing out. As Izuku's gaze expanded, he noticed there were many more strings frantically moving about above him. The black one looked at them like a predator waiting for its chance to strike. As Izuku watched the hand-like string move back and forth like a snake ready to pounce, he was suddenly jolted. Izuku suddenly sprang up from his bed. This time it's much more peaceful. The searing roaring pain in his skull has receded into a dull throbbing one, much more manageable than it was before. Painkillers, Izuku figures. Izuku starts to blink his eyes rapidly and attempt to bring the world around him into focus. The last thing Izuku remembers is taking Moonfish's quirk before everything felt wrong. Maybe this is what drove the man to do what he did. Izuku isn't sure, but finally the world around him makes sense. He can see a green mop of hair very similar to his own, as well as a familiar gaunt man with yellow hair, and Izuku even recognizes a girl with jet black hair and an overly familiar attitude of caring while also not caring. The image focuses and the boy lets them know he's up. "Hi guys," Izuku says weakly. All three of them rush over to the bed to make sure he's alright, but they make sure to only talk in hushed whispers. "Hey mom, guess it wasn't alright after all," Izuku joked weakly, and the woman began tearing up. "I told you I didn't like it, honey. I'm just glad you're alright." Inko spoke as she hugged her child. "Midoriya, my boy, can you explain what happened? One second you were fine, the next you were screaming in pain, then fainting the next. I was extremely worried." Yagi asked. "You dumb idiot. First you don't answer my texts for 3 days, then I find out you're in the hospital. Don't scare me like that." Momo said. "Sorry guys, I honestly don't know what happened. My head just started feeling like it's on fire, and the next thing I know I'm here. It still hurts, but it's much less painful than it was. By the way, how long have I been out?" Midoriya asked, wincing as he touched his head. Toshinori answers, "You've been out for 3 days, my boy. You had a fever of 103 degrees, but the strange thing is that it was only your head that had the spike in temperature. The doctors had no idea what was wrong. We're just glad you pulled through." The number one hero smiled. "Ah well, I see. I'm sorry I worried you all." Izuku paused before talking to his friend. "Yaoyorozu, can I talk to them for a moment? I promise I'll talk to you after." Izuku smiled weakly at the girl. "Fine." Yaoyorozu did not look happy. "Mom, Toshinori, I think it was all for one. I don't know how many quirks I can hold at once, but after each one we took it started to hurt more and more, and I think Moonfish's quirk was the final straw. It broke me. I'm honestly glad I fainted when I did, because the pain just hurt so much, although I'm strangely feeling much less pain now despite having the same number of quirks. Maybe Teresa cool down period. Maybe I built a tolerance to it. Maybe it's because I used my quirk so much in one day. I've never used so many times in one day after. Hell, I don't think I've ever used my quirk more than twice in a day now that I think about it." Izuku kept muttering to himself while All Might just sweat dropped at the sight. "Young Midoriya, stop it. I'm glad we learned of this limit when we did. It could have happened in a much worse scenario. We can talk about this later. For now, talk to the poor girl. Miss Yaoyorozu was so worried about you." Toshinori pointed to the girl who was sticking her head into the room from the hospital hallway. When the gazes of the three people present looked over to her, she quickly pulled her head back. Inko laughed at the girl for being so obvious. "I love you, Izuku. I'm just glad you're okay." After they left, Yaoyorozu was ushered back into the room. The girl was pouting. "You know I'm mad at you. You didn't even tell me you'd be doing something this dangerous. You leave me alone and then get hurt while I know nothing. It feels like you don't trust me, and it hurts." Izuku had not felt this guilty in a while, and he honestly didn't know how to respond. Yaoyorozu, I had no idea what we'd be doing was dangerous. I'm sorry I kept you in the dark though. It won't happen again, I promise," Izuku said while trying to smile as brightly as he could at his friend without hurting his head even more. "Izuku, do you know why I have no other friends and I hate Monoma?" the heiress asked him. "No, I don't. I have my suspicions though. I just didn't want to pry." Midoriya answered truthfully. "Well, let me tell you, every single person I've ever befriended has tried to use me in some way. For my wealth, for my looks, for my grades, for my quirk." Well, that explains the look Yaoyorozu gave him when Izuku asked about her quirk. "You're the first person who hasn't done that, and I truly appreciate it, so please don't keep stuff like this from me, alright? My family is super defensive of me now because of it, and I just want to shun everyone away so they don't have a chance to use me in the first place. You're my only real friend, please don't leave me, alright?" Yaoyorozu started crying as she said this, finally letting the pain of her isolation out. Izuku just looked down in defeat and let out a small sigh. "I promise I'm not going anywhere, but some of the stuff I know I can't tell you because it's not my secret. That being said, I do trust you and I'll give you all my secrets." Izuku beamed at her wildly. "This next weekend, let's meet up at a place really special to me. I'll tell you everything I can, I promise." Yaoyorozu just nodded back. They shared a small hug and that was that. Chapter 2. Izuku awoke with a start before realizing he's back in his own home. It had been 2 days since his little trip to the hospital. Today was it. It was the day where Izuku would tell Yaoyorozu about his real quirk. Izuku gave a silent prayer to whatever deity would let him still be friends with Yaoyorozu at the end of the day. Then, hoping today went well, tomorrow Izuku would work with all might to train his quirk and find out why exactly it hurt him. Izuku was supposed to meet Yaoyorozu at 11 a.m. Apparently her limo would be dropping her off at his place and from there they would both walk to the beach. Izuku would have told the girl to meet him to Goba, but Izuku doubted her parents would like their daughter being dropped off at a garbage dump. It was currently 8 a.m., which meant Izuku had 3 hours to mess around, and what better way than to do that than write in the journal that he stored all the information about his quirks in.
Quirks currently in my possession. All for one, emitter-type quirk. Allows for the instant transmission of a quirk upon physical touch with the intended target. Overuse, to many quirks, or to much usage leads to a migraine from hell, and if pushed too far will cause the user to faint. Still need to figure what exactly is the cause of said drawback. Ultra Sight, mutation-type quirk. Changes eyes of the person who has it to a pure shade of black, passively improves the sight of its user, giving them 20/20ths vision. Night vision functions in a different way to normal night vision. It just makes it look like a regular day versus making everything green like regular night vision. He can hold this one for 20 minutes before it starts to hurt a bit. The previous user supposedly could keep this up for hours at a time. Thermal vision functions as regular thermal vision, turning his vision blue except for heat sources which get redder the hotter they are. Blacklight vision functions in the exact same way blacklight does as well. Radiation vision is his least used vision and will probably remain so due to the fact that Izuku wanted to be nowhere near any source of radiation. Zoom is incredibly useful, being able to see about 1 kilometer out. Apparently the last user could see up to 5 kilometers out. I tried combining it with thermal once. I regretted that almost instantly, however, as it felt like my eyes were burning from the strain, but quirks are like muscles and I'll need to train so I can do that. X-ray vision. Dark vision. I need to find a better name for this one. It darkens the world around and causes living things to become a yellow silhouette. He has about 15 feet of range with this at the moment. I really need a new name for this quirk. Oh, I know, I'll call it Dark Vision. Jetstream, emitter-type quirk. Allows the user to fire bursts of typhoon-level air from the palms. With proper practice the quirk can be used to fly. This is by far Izuku's favorite quirk. The winds can reach up to 200 miles per hour with only 120 miles per hour being needed to lift the average weight person off the ground, and since Izuku is a child he needs much less for takeoff. It's unfortunate that Izuku can only make winds of around 80 miles per hour. He wanted to fly so badly. Overuse leads to the person feeling like they have been running for a very long time. He's really glad All Might helped him train his endurance because Izuku can hold the quirk on for a good 10 minutes at this point. The stronger the gust the faster you exhaust it. I can only hold 80 miles per hour gusts for around a minute at the moment. Super Teeth, mutation. Emitter. Type quirk. Honestly, Izuku wants nothing to do with this quirk. He's only used it once and he really doesn't like how it feels. It feels itchy and scratchy. Using it is like rubbing your teeth on tin foil. He also doesn't know to classify it because it both mutates his body and fires his teeth out. On the bright side, he will never need dentures. He muses. Combustion, emitter-type quirk. Allows the user to manipulate any fire within a 30-foot radius. It has almost no drawback and allows for free movement of the fire almost perfectly. The downside is there already has to be a fire, so at the moment it's pretty useless to him, but hopefully down the line he get a fire quirk because combined with this one will give Izuku a ton of options.
Izuku looked up to the clock and saw that it was nearing 11 a.m. He had been writing and rewriting his notes for quite a while now, he realized. Better start getting ready to go. Izuku got dressed quickly and moved out into the living room, only to see his mom making lunch. "Hey mom," Izuku said, beaming at her. "Oh, good afternoon dear, ready to hang out with little Yaoyorozu?" Inko stopped slicing carrots as she said this. "Yeah, I think I am, but I'm terrified about how she'll react to seeing my quirk though. I hope she doesn't get scared of me like everyone else did." Izuku brooded. That was the past. Izuku, come on, this girl is better than the rest, she won't judge you. With how she was when you were in the hospital I really doubt it honey, it'll be fine I promise. Inko giving her son a hug that he definitely needed. Just after that they heard a knock on the door. I wonder who that could be? Inko said in a playful manner. Izuku just sighed and went over to the door to open it, finding a wild Yaoyorozu on the other side. She was wearing a sundress with flowers on it. "Hey Midoriya." Momo beamed. "So where are we going? I'm not gonna ruin the surprise, Yaoyorozu." "Alright, we're leaving mom, I'll see you later." Izuku smiled back at the elder Midoriya. They made small talk as they walked to the beach, mainly about the stuff Izuku had missed while he had been in the hospital. Turns out Monoma is still a jerk. The blonde apparently went on some kind of tirade about being part of the superior class of people when the teacher started a lesson on the working class. God, that guy is such a cocky fuck, Izuku thought. Well, at least he doesn't beat people up by literally exploding them. Anything good happen while I was in the hospital, Yaoyorozu? Izuku said, trying to lighten the mood. I got another 100 on our English test? Momo asked questioningly. Well, I'd say good job, but I'm not really surprised you did, Izuku laughed. What about outside of school? How are the young Mrs. parents? Izuku brought out the snob voice the girl liked so much, which made her giggle a bit. They're doing alright, just busy as usual. Being the heiress of one of most successful support companies gets lonely sometimes. Yaoyorozu looked down a bit sad. Izuku has no idea what possessed him in that moment, but the look on her face was criminal. He quickly strode in front of the girl before grabbing her hands and forcing her to look at him. Momo, I know it isn't easy and I know about the more unsavory things that are said about you. But I promise you none of them are true, they're all just jealous of you. The sudden close contact was causing the girl to go beet red and she could only let out small panic noises as a response. Wait, did he just say her name? Yaoyorozu's head was officially fried. She just stood there broken as her brain was trying to comprehend everything that just happened. Izuku, realizing what he'd just done, quickly let go of her hands before stepping back. Sorry, why Yaoyorozu, IIJ just wanted to help. I didn't mean to use your F first N name. Izuku turned his head to the side trying to stammer out an apology. Momo started stammering out her own apology. It's F fine, IJ just wasn't expecting it. When Yaoyorozu finally looked up, she noticed Midoriya had the exact same expression on his face and just started to laugh. You always know what to say, you dork, thanks. Yaoyorozu, now that she had taken some time to breath and calm herself, realized she didn't mind the use of her first name. In fact, it could have made her happy. Midoriya? Why yes, Yaoyorozu? Izuku mumbled. See, could you say it again? The girl was blushing profusely. Now it was time for Izuku's brain to fry. He knew exactly what the girl meant. He wasn't that dense, but to be asked that by a girl of all things felt completely out of left field for the boy. Realizing she was still looking at him expectantly, Izuku put his head into overdrive. Hey brain, we need to say something back. Izuku just settled on doing what the girl asked and spoke quietly. Momo. The squeal released from the girl in front of him was definitely not what Izuku had been expecting. Maybe he should respond with the same thing. Then would you call me Izuku? Momo just nodded weakly. Izuku. It felt right on her tongue. There was an awkward silence for a bit after that. Neither of them knew how to go back to normalcy, so Izuku did the next best thing and completely changed topics. So try out any of my ideas about your quirk? Thankful for the quick transition. Oh, actually yes. After your suggestion that I should focus on learning how to make different types of ranged weapons, I finally succeeded on making a tranquilizer gun. I also then may have accidentally tranked myself. Yaoyorozu said that last part much quieter than the first. Oh my god, Momo, that's so cool. Your quirk is amazing, you know? So I got really bored one day while thinking about how you could potentially apply your quirk in interesting ways, so I did the math on something weird. Momo, you do realize that if you wanted to, you could destabilize the world economy, right? Like in a month you could double all the existing gold on the planet, and I just think that's the coolest fucking thing. Izuku, stop stuttering when you say her name, you have one job. Momo was blushing slightly at the overwhelming praise she was getting. This was in addition to how cute she found it that Izuku couldn't say her name without pausing. It was then that the dump came into view. Momo was obviously confused at why exactly this Izuku's most important place in the world. Izuku, not my place to judge, but why is this dump the most important place to you? Oh come on girl, we're doing IT too. Izuku took a deep breath and finally, after a few seconds of silence, he summoned the courage to tell her about his quirk, although he'd steeled himself in more than one way. Momo, this place is the most important to me because this is where my journey to become a hero truly began, where my mentor told me that even with my villainous quirk I could change the world. I don't want to scare you, but what I'm about to tell you is kind of a government secret. The quirk stealer paused, letting the shock enter her eyes, and decided this was it. He was really doing it. Izuku took off his contact lenses and showed her his real eyes. Yaoyorozu was visibly startled when she saw them, but recovered quickly. Noticing Izuku had stopped stuttering, she did her best to do the same. Izuku, that's not that big of a deal, your eyes are just a little different. That's not it, Momo. My quirk, my real quirk, is the ability to take and give quirks. Izuku waited for that bombshell of information to register in the girl's eyes. He was expecting to see fear in them, but what appeared was instead admiration. Izuku, are you serious? That's like literally the coolest quirk ever. How many do you have? Welp, this was not how Izuku was expecting this to go, if you were being honest. You're not scared? I could literally just walk over, touch you, and you would be quirkless, permanently. So why aren't you scared of me? Izuku was silently cheering inside. She didn't reject him, thank God. Izuku, I know you'd never do that. If you had wanted to, you could have stolen it literally the first day we met, but you never did. That being said, I can see why you think I should be Were people scared of you at your old school? I always thought it was weird that you transferred to one of the most expensive schools in Japan despite not coming from a wealthy background yourself, and on top of that it was in the middle of the semester. A lot of things regarding Izuku were starting to make sense in her head now. This mentor must have really helped him. Yeah, they were absolutely horrified of me, or they downright hated me. I had no one or nothing. I guess that's why I wanted to talk to you at first. Being lonely isn't fun. But my mentor saved me, and I wanted to save you. He smiled at her. If she was willing to stick with him even after learning what his quirk was, then he would stick with her. PSSH, you're a total dork, you know that. But, thanks Izuku. Alright, you gotta show me all your quirks Izuku, no hiding them from me, you hear. She sounded like she was pouting at the end there, which would make sense considering how long he had kept her in the dark. Alright, I guess I'll lead with my eyes. He was very thorough and showed her each and every one of his quirks. Izuku even had her make a lighter so he could show off combustion. She was just as horrified of the teeth quirk as Izuku was, which he found funny, to be honest. My favorite is Jetstream, watch this. He pointed of his hands down and hit his full power, causing him to jump into the air. He couldn't fly yet, but he could glide. He decelerated himself enough to land softly on the ground from where he had leapt from. Izuku, that reminds me, how did you get those quirks? Who did you steal them from? Momo looked a little frightened as she said that. She just realized that Izuku had to have stolen these from someone. Oh, don't worry please. It was completely legal, I swear. The frightened boy stammered out as loudly and quickly as he could to reassure the girl. She jumped first, then her look of fear fading with a sigh of relief. I can't tell you all the details, but I took these from bad people, people who abused their quirks to hurt others. He couldn't tell her about All Might, after all that wasn't his secret. But how is that legal still? Momo was confused to say the least. Oh, the police use me to take them from bad people. As long as I don't take anyone else's quirk, the police allow me to take them from prisoners. My quirk has a kind of hunger to it. It has to get a quirk every once in a while, or I will get this irresistible urge to take one. By taking quirks from criminals, I help them out and they help me out. Izuku explained that as best as he could. And how did that arrangement get set up? The idea made sense to Momo, but how did it happen in the first place? Well, I stole someone's quirk the day I got mine and the police got involved. I met my mentor that day and he saved me, Izuku said with the biggest smile she had seen on the boy. This mentor must be really important to Izuku, she thought. Alright, well, I'm glad you told me. I guess it was something really big. The creation girl started laughing, realizing just how big of a secret Izuku had. She thought it was going to be something dumb and he was just making a big deal out of it. Well, that's everything, Momo. Anything else you wanted to know? Izuku was glad it turned out this way. Well, nothing to ask, just more of a statement. I know I've never said it and you never talked about your quirks, so I didn't think you wanted to be a hero, but clearly I was wrong about that. So let me tell you. Let's be the best heroes ever. Momo gave a thumbs up to Izuku at the exclamation. Izuku just chuckled. He mimicked the action. To the best heroes. Once they had gotten food, Momo had to go back, but overall this was a pretty good day, Izuku thought to himself. Mom was right, she was still with him. Izuku met with All Might the next day to practice his quirks and to learn more about All for One. Midoriya, my boy, how did everything with young Yaoyorozu go? All Might said, flashing his trademark smile at the child. It went amazing, All Might. She wasn't even scared of. Well, she was for a bit when she realized my quirks had to have come from somewhere. She thought I'd stolen them from people illegally at first, but once I explained everything it was fine, and don't worry, I didn't say anything about you. Izuku explained to the gaunt skeleton of a man with a heart made of gold. That's very good, my boy, very good indeed. Having someone your age in your corner while even knowing what your quirk is a huge step forward. Now on to today, we are going to have you repeatedly use All for One on me, taking and giving quirks over and over to see if that was the cause of your predicament the other day. Please tell me if starts hurting and we shall stop immediately. Toshinori explained. Izuku nodded. The plan made sense to him. Any particular quirk you want, All Might? Give me the propulsion quirk. It is your favorite after all, and I'd like to try it out for myself. The boy walked over and gave it to him, but as he did so he felt something he hadn't felt before. Just as he was giving the man the quirk, he knew it was wrong. Izuku shouldn't be giving him this quirk. Warning bells went off right as the transfer started. He immediately cancelled the quirk and pulled it back, but the damage had been done. Izuku watched All Might scream in pain, then collapse. All Might! He screamed, running over to the man and his lifeless body. Thankfully, by the time he had reached the man, he was already coming to. Oh my god, I'm glad you're alright. Izuku let out through uncontrolled sobs. He had hurt his mentor. He had hurt All Might. All Might just started to stand wearily. My boy, what just happened? I was fine then. As your quirk went into my body, it started to overwhelm me. My head hurts so badly. This must be what it's like when your quirk hurts you. But regardless, I am alright. You pulled that quirk back in the nick of time. Izuku was just sobbing against the man. All Might went to hug him and whisper reassurances that it's all right and most definitely not his fault. It was All Might's idea after all. Several minutes later Izuku had calmed down enough to explain what happened. I was just about to give you the quirk when I think All for One tried to warn me. It was desperately telling me not to give you that quirk. Thanks to that I was able to pull it back before I fully gave it to you. You said the headache was like the one I got, right? That must be it then. It's having too many quirks that causes the migraines. Your body already has 7 quirks. 8 must be too much for you. The boy trying his best to calmly rationalize the situation. That would appear to be the case, young Midoriya, but you said the headache stopped for you, correct? Maybe your quirk can be trained to carry more quirks, much like improving any other quirk, but in your case you strengthen your quirk by holding enough quirks to be near your current limit. At least that's what I think. Your old limit was 5 quirks, but I have a feeling you can hold more now. All Might explained in a way that makes sense. Izuku paused in thought for a bit before responding. If he can't hold that many quirks, his use for the police would go down exponentially. But then an idea struck him. A way to both help the police, train his quirk, and help the populace. All Might, I have a favor to ask and an idea I think would be very beneficial for both me, the public, and the police. All Might, do you know if there are organizations out there that help the quirkless? Izuku asked, All Might having no idea where his trainee was taking this. I do believe so, my boy. Why though? Well, I can't help the police if I can only hold like 7 quirks before I melt down. However, I don't need to be the one with the quirks. All Might paused for a second, then it came to him. My boy, you are so smart. Toshinori exclaimed. Yup, I can take quirks near to my limit, then donate the rest to quirkless people that we deem are capable of having them. Rinse and repeat. We train my quirk and we help people who have suffered like I have. It's especially useful since there aren't many quirkless my age. The 20% of the population that do are mainly elders born to previous generations after all. Izuku explained his plan, and much to the surprise of Izuku, All Might was stroking his chin thoughtfully. Izuku had thought his idea might get shut down, but the man was seriously considering it. After a bit All Might spoke. Alright my boy, I'll look into my contacts so we can set this up. It's honestly an ingenious solution to our problem. I'm so proud of you, young Midoriya. We should get you some more quirks first though. Are there any you don't want currently? No hesitation at all, Izuku immediately stammered out, Moonfish's quirk please. It's too freaky for me. Izuku blanched in disgust of the thought of his teeth being used to carve someone up. Ignorance is bliss at least, and whoever he gives it to won't know what it's done. All Might just laughed. I couldn't agree with you any more, young Midoriya. We're going to the prison this weekend so we can try to up your limit. I think you'll quite like the next one we got for you. Remember the ex-hero Death Arms? Izuku was disgusted when he heard that name. He had looked up to the man after all. Apparently Death Arms had been getting paid off by a mob in the area he patrolled in. In exchange for not bothering their group, they paid him quite well. When he was finally caught with his hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, the police had come for him and he murdered 3 cops by throwing a police car at them. He was eventually subdued by his old comrade Kamui Woods, his hero license obviously revoked, and he was sent to Tartarus. Yeah, I remember the guy, Izuku said with disgust on his lips. I'll be glad to take his quirk though. Izuku switching from hatred to joy so quickly All Might could swear it was never there. This boy and his quirks, he thought with a soft chuckle. Yes, it is a most excellent quirk, minor super strength. It has nothing on Ofa though. All Might said that like he was pouting. Izuku assumed because he refused to take Ofa but was so willing to take what was essentially a worse Ofa. Izuku just shrugged. Yeah, I know. And with that another 2 years passed quickly, Izuku taking and giving so many quirks he had honestly lost count a year ago. It was funny, he thought. The media had been calling what Izuku did the second awakening of quirks, a new phenomenon where quirkless people suddenly manifested a quirk out of nowhere, the oldest being 13 years old. Izuku was proud of himself. He never thought that life would go his way for once, but he was helping society. His quirk was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He could prevent people from being dickus like himself. He had even upped his limit to 15 quirks before he passed out. He continued his workout sessions, and All Might said his real training would begin soon, and as well as finally finding a successor, Izuku was very proud of the man's choice, though to be fair he was the one recommended them to All Might.
Messages between Momo and Izuku.
Hey Momo, what if I told you I had a proposition for you?
What kind of proposition?
Well, remember that mentor I told you about? He wants to meet you.
What for Izu?
Well, I asked if he could train you as well and he agreed. You still want to be a hero, right?
Of course, we've been talking about that for years now, when we finally join UA together.
Perfect. Then meet me at Dagoba Beach at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'll see you there.
Wait, Izuku, why?
Cinnamon Bun has gone offline.
Chapter 3. Izuku was staring out at the sea, the sun beginning to rise over the horizon. It truly was one of the most beautiful things he's had the privilege of seeing. Now it's time to give that to everyone else. He turned seeing Momo and All Might behind him in his skeletal form as they walked towards him. The last 4 years were his tutorial. The game started now, he mused to himself. Good morning Toshinori-san, and you too Momo. He smiled brightly at the both of them. So Izuku, why are we out here at 6 a.m. and who is this man next to me? Momo knew this beach was important to Izuku and she remembered this man from the hospital, so she was pretty certain this man was the mentor that Izuku had been talking about, but she couldn't be 100% sure yet. Oh, I'll just let him explain himself, Izuku said with a wolfish grin on his face. Alright, so something weird was going on, she thought to herself. Miss Yaoyorozu, my name is Yagi Toshinori, but you may better know me as the world's current symbol of peace and justice, All Might, young miss. The man said as he bulked back up into his hero form. Yep, this was it. She had finally gone insane. Her best friend could steal people's quirks. He was being taught by All Might, and for some reason All Might looked like someone had sucked out his insides with a vacuum cleaner. She slapped herself hard. It didn't wake her up. Alright, so this isn't a dream. Maybe I'm a schizophrenic. Did the butler slip something into my tea this morning? She couldn't rule out drugs after all. She muttered to herself. All Might looked down at the poor girl. A thought occurred to him. Oh no, it's spreading. Izuku meanwhile was just laughing hysterically. Is that what it looks like when I do that? Momo, it's fine, you're not crazy and this is all real. Izuku managed to get out between his fits of laughing. But then why does the number one hero look like that? Still not having fully recovered. Well, young miss, if you have to ask, this is why. He deflated mid-sentence, showing her the massive injury to his stomach. I was injured in a fight with a seriously powerful villain. I lost 3/4 of my stomach and a part of my lungs. I've been getting weaker and weaker, which is why I need a successor to become the next symbol. Momo was visibly shook for a second, but then realized it made sense. Izuku would be the perfect successor to All Might. He's already plenty strong and he will only get stronger. Who better to replace the symbol? It was perfect in her mind, but then life as per usual went in a completely different direction. Which is why I want you to become my successor, Miss Yaoyorozu. All Might said with such conviction, such pride, she couldn't believe the man believed she could do it. She was only Momo after all. Wait, what? I thought Izuku was your successor? She belted out the sentence as fast as she could. You were not wrong to assume that. However, young Midoriya turned it down and in his place he nominated you. You who were only ever belittled and abused, you who never lost your convictions despite the hardships you have faced in life. Someone whose ideals to be a hero were never shut down despite seeing some of the worst humanity had to offer. The blonde-haired man clenched his fist when he finished. Momo was blushing like crazy. Izuku had said all of that about her? She didn't know whether to be impressed, embarrassed or both. She turned to Izuku. Why did you turn him down? Isn't this like your dream? Wait a minute, how would I even be made into a successor? Realizing she had missed the most important step, but then she realized Izuku was here. He could give her All Might's quirk. That's probably why he was chosen in the first place. All Might, watching the gears turn in the poor girl's head, had finally had enough. Time to just say everything and stop letting her confuse herself more. Miss Yaoyorozu, I would ask you wait until I'm done to start asking questions, or we are going to be here forever. He laughed. This girl reminded him so much of Izuku the first time they had this conversation. Then he spoke, telling her everything about One for All but leaving All for One out of it. He was gone and dealt with, and we have a new better All for One to take his place. Better to let the past die with the past, he believed. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of information dropped on me here. So first off, there is actually more than one quirk that can be given. I honestly thought that was unique to Izuku. Secondly, you want to give me your quirk so that I can become the next symbol along with Izuku. Did I get that all right? The girl was in various states of shock, her mind trying to process everything that was just said. Hell, Izuku having the quirk he did was still a shock to her. This just took the cake though. Yes, that is the state of things, Miss Yaoyorozu, so do you accept? The skeleton said with conviction in his eyes. She had never seen All Might look like this. He wasn't smiling. Then again, the All Might she knew didn't cough up blood every other sentence. But she had already decided that she would be the best hero alongside Izuku long ago. Time to put preaching into practice, she supposed. Yes, I accept. The man smiled. Good, that brings us to why we are here today, for both of you. This beach used to be one of the greatest vacation spots Musadifa had to offer, but now look at it. Much like society, it's broken, ugly, marred, corrupted. The entrance exams for UA are in 10 months, and while I think you have the character of a hero, you certainly do not have the body of one just yet, young Yaoyorozu. My quirk is dangerous, even to its user. It's so powerful that if someone with noodly arms like yourself used it, it would likely detonate your limbs or even your entire body. We need to toughen you up before you can even accept my quirk. That is why we are here. We will build up your muscle while you clean this beach. Remember these words, After all, just because something isn't flashy doesn't mean it isn't heroic. It's almost always the little things that we do that will have the biggest impact. While All Might was good at speeches, Izuku already knew that of course, but when the man wanted to he could clearly belt it out. Or maybe he wrote that before coming here. Either way it was good. Izuku spoke up next. Am I going to take part in this? She needs the muscle after all and I don't. Plus if I help she will have less to clean, it could harm her workout. Izuku didn't want to be left out but it made sense. Worry not young Midoriya, I already have a training schedule ready for both you and Miss Yaoyorozu, and yes you will be taking part but you will have a smaller section to work on. Your current super strength quirk would make you able to clear too much too quickly. Momo remembered when Izuku first got that quirk, he had basically been to the moon and back with how happy he was. She didn't admit it or say it out loud but she was kind of jealous of Izuku's quirk even though hers basically was playing God, the power of creation. It was kind of biblical when you take the time to think about it, or more like when Izuku had the time to think about it. All Might broke her out of her ruminating. This training schedule will be downright brutal, especially to you Miss Yaoyorozu, are you sure you want to partake? This was her final out she realized, once she started this would be her future. Either the number 1 or the number 2 hero, she didn't hesitate last time and she won't hesitate this time. I'm not backing out just because things might get a bit rough. She smiled at the man, showing him her fierce determination. I like that kind of spirit, you go getter you. Buffing himself back up. Like I always say, plus ultra. The training began that morning. It was absolutely brutal. Momo vomited from the sheer amount of working out she had to do. She was kind of mad when she looked over at Izuku and saw that he wasn't even winded yet. Stupid quirks, stupid broken super strength, stupid super cooling. Izuku saw Momo looking at him angrily. He just gave her the best smile he could, which only further provoked the poor girl. Well, that was good for our first morning, but overtraining is dangerous. It's best to know when to quit. That reminds me, Nizu wanted to see you today, Izuku. The man said from atop his self-balancing scooter. Izuku visibly brightened up. Really? It's finally time for the meeting? Momo was confused, but at this point, between vomiting and every else that had happened today, she just stopped questioning it. Alright, if we are done for the day then I shall call my driver to come get me. Thank you for everything, All Might Sensei, and same time tomorrow, Izuku? The boy blushed slightly but nodded in response. He really liked that girl, but not in that way, or maybe he did. He honestly didn't know at this point. By the way, All Might, this training kinda feels like it's doing nothing for me. I know this sounds wrong but I feel like I should work on endurance exclusively, or I don't know. Oh, I'll be quirkless when I do these workouts. Molecular manipulation makes it so I never overheat, and with my super strength I'm not actually working out. Even if I can only lift a ton at maximum, while you have and can lift entire buildings, it makes lifting this debris pretty easy. Izuku, half thinking out loud, half trying to explain himself to his mentor. I know, my boy, I figured it would. Your body has reached a point where training normally just won't cut it. I had you here more for moral support for her than anything else. I'll try and think of some ways we can improve you outside of just improving your quirks and your use of them, but then maybe that's all we should be focusing on. After all, for you, getting stronger isn't like other people. You don't have to work to improve your body, you can just take something that will do it for you. Which is both the lazy and probably the correct option. All Might shrugged, unable to figure out how to train someone that can't be trained. Either way, let us depart, my boy. Nizu is waiting and he is terrifying when he gets angry. With that, they walked off to All Might's beaten up station wagon and drove off. A good 30 minutes later they had arrived at UA, the massive gate hanging in the distance. And some weird homeless man standing by it? Not exactly what he thought his first time entering UA would be like, if he's being honest. All Might. Who is that? Izuku moving slightly behind All Might just in case. That, my boy, is who will be your homeroom teacher, Izuku Shouta, better known as Eraserhead. Wait, that's Eraserhead. He's the hero WHO made me decide to become an underground hero. I wanted to erase quirks just like he did. Eraserhead, for all his composure, slumped at the outburst. He had a fan? The whole point of being underground was so he didn't have fans. This stupid problem child is really going to be an issue, isn't he? Izuku had never heard of a student being able to skip all practical exams before. Hell, the man didn't even know what his quirk was yet, but it'd have to be pretty amazing if that rat was willing to break all the rules just to let the kid in. He even ordered Izuku that if the kid ended up in his class he had to consult with Nizu before expelling him. Izuku had never been given that stipulation before. Hell, he got away with literally expelling his entire class this year. It honestly kind of worried him that the rat was willing to overstep his teaching style in order to protect this kid, if he was being honest. Not to mention the kid doesn't even have to take the recommendation exam. He's so recommended he just got, and assuming he passed his written exam of course, breaking himself from the haze of his mind. Alright problem child, we're going inside, the rat wants to see you, and oh here you go, it's a guest pass. Izuku was still beaming brightly at the man, and if this was what having fans felt like, then he made the absolute correct call by going underground. They walked in silence until they reached the massive door leading into the office of UA's principal. Fair warning kid, the principal can be really scary. I don't know how you got on his radar so early, but it'll probably end up biting you in the ass. Let's just get this over with so I can go back to sleep, Izuku mumbled that last part to himself. Upon walking into the room, Izuku was greeted with the sight of a small white animal with a scar over one of his eyes. The creature in question was rapidly scanning the boy. He felt like he was being seen through if he was being honest. Ah yes, Izuku Midoriya, I've heard quite a bit about you. Smart, talented, resourceful. After all, one of our future teachers has spoken so highly of you, and from what I can see and from the things I have heard about you, he wasn't wrong about that in the slightest. Thank you Principal Nizu, I feel blessed enough as it is to have earned your praise as well as beyond amazing. Izuku bowed to the animal. PSSH, stop that. To you I am Nizu and never feel the need to bow to me. I'm sure you've heard of my past. The last thing I want is someone to be subservient to me. I would rather see you as an equal than anything less. The creature spoke giddily, knowing exactly what the man, bear? Rat? Fuck it, he wants to be treated equally, I will call him a man, was talking about. After all, Nizu's past was horrific. He didn't deserve being treated like a literal lab rat. So you are probably wondering why I wanted to speak to you. I had a few questions that needed answering before you were accepted here. He then turned to Izuku. And seeing if Eraserhead's quirk worked on you as one of them. Go ahead and activate a safe one. He gestured to the boy, who simply nodded and activated Jetstream at a low speed. Izuku tried turning it off. Izuku, not understanding where this was going, activated his quirk, and sure enough the wind had stopped. I turned it off. Now Izuku, try to activate another one. Nizu stared at the situation like it was a puzzle to be solved. Izuku nodded again and activated his fire breathing. He let out a small amount of heat and then grabbed control of it with combustion. Seems like my other quirk still worked, Nizu. Izuku was freaking out. No one had ever been able to use their quirk when he turned it off before, and what did they mean, quirks? What the hell was going on? Alright, you all are going to tell me what is going on right now. Izuku was usually really good at keeping his composure, but this was too much. Simple. The rat smiled at him. Izuku's quirk is the ability to give and take quirks. As it stands, he has removed the quirks well over 1,000 criminals who were all bad enough to warrant stays at Tartarus. He then gave those quirks to the quirkless. I'm sure you've heard of the second quirk awakening, Izuku? Well, here is the answer. This single boy has already helped the lives of countless people before the age of 15. I'm sure you can see why I'm so interested in him now. No? Izuku was dumbstruck. He had to teach this kid? This isn't a problem, child. This is a fucking nuclear bomb attached to a 14-year-old. How the hell am I supposed to teach this? Nizu, if I am teaching this child, I'm asking for a raise. A large one, he said it while staring down at the boy. Fine, Izuku. I take it you accept then? The reason this boy should be a hero has already been made evidently clear, at least I think it has anyway. The rat said while chuckling. Izuku just rubbed his hand against his face. Alright, fine, I accept, but knowing you, Nizu, I'm sure there is something you aren't telling me. How much of a workload am I taking on right here? Please be honest with me. The rat just cackled maniacally. You catch on fast, Izuku. There are conditions, but none of them should trouble you. They only trouble the boy. After all, they are almost all on him, and as long as he acts as he is told, there will be no trouble at all. And to make you feel better, there have been 0 accidents for the past 4 years Izuku has operated. The only real worry is if another party messes up and I am forced to take action. Now, as to the actual conditions themselves, I'll let Izuku explain them to you. The rat had a gleam in his eye and Izuku really didn't like it. Izuku rubbed his fingers together before beginning. The first condition is that we need to tell everyone in the class my quirk, and stress that if they do not keep it secret, then the full weight of UAS legal team will be brought to bear against whoever broke that condition. All of class 1A and the staff will be told. 1B will be told eventually as well. So that's why the damned rat was smiling, Izuku thought. The second is that I cannot use my quirk outside of hero training or whenever a teacher gives me permission. The third is that any quirk I take must be returned at the end of the training or whenever I'm told to. Other than that, I'm like any other student. I promise I won't cause you any trouble, Izuku-sensei. The boy bowing before him. Izuku didn't like this, but he can't look at the image of this boy bowing before him, promising to be the best little student he ever had and not feel something. He was going to regret this, wasn't he? He would in fact come to regret this. Alright, fine kid, I'll take you. Just keep that promise to me and avoid trouble and we'll be good. The boy immediately straightened up, staring into the man's eyes with the brightest expression he had ever seen. He had almost forgot the kid was a fan. Can I ask for an autograph please? Aizawa sensei, it's just you've always been the inspiration for the kind-of hero I wanted to be, and it's just so cool to meet you. For the first time since the meeting started, All Might spoke. Well, I say spoke, but he just starting laughing. Izuku, my boy, please calm yourself. I know you and your love for heroes, but do try to breath. Izuku took a big gulp of air after the muttering spree he just dropped. Staring straight into Aizawa's eyes, he already regretted this, but to his credit he took the notebook the boy had and noticed what it was. It was a page all about him, several actually. As he kept looking through the book he realized how scarily accurate the boy was on his and several other heroes' weaknesses. Eraserhead's quirk only works on things he can see, so cloaks and the like completely negate his quirk. He fights almost completely quirkless other than his capturing tape, so really all it would take is to abuse the fact that two people are fighting quirkless, bring a gun, and it would be relatively easy to defeat Eraserhead. The other option is to go for his vision. If he gets the drop on you, force him to blink. If you can get your quirk back for even a second, that could swing the battle in your favor. He honestly wanted to confiscate the thing when he imagined it falling into the wrong hands. He relented, though, realizing this was the first time he had ever given an autograph. Although he figured the rat would get a kick out of the book, so he threw it him after signing it. Aizawa wasn't kind, but he wasn't cruel either, and if the boy wanted his autograph he would have to earn it. That book has some scary information in it, Nidzu. It should be kept out of the public if I'm being honest. Nidzu curiously took the book, and then started looking through it. This was the most detailed analysis of so many different heroes and their weaknesses and abilities he had ever seen. He had a quirk that gave him an intellect far above the average human, and even he was impressed. He found his own page and was startled at the amount of information. Allows the user to maintain and multitask up to 5 actions at once. Intellect is so high it almost causes the user to have near precognition when given the time to analyze the situation. Weakness, surprise or unexpected moves. If you can catch the user off guard, then their intellect is completely useless. If you wanted to defeat someone with this quirk, unexpected sneak attacks were the best option. This boy, he thought. Oh, he liked this boy. The rat starting smiling, and it was terrifying. Izuku, how would you like private tutoring sessions from me to help develop your analytical skills? Izuku answered with a start. You really think I'm worth that? I would love to. Aizawa immediately regretted handing that book to Nidzu. What had he done? He just made a second Nidzu. This was a curse that would haunt him for the rest of his days. Well, I did say I had several questions, but honestly I don't need to ask them anymore. Just with how you've been interacting with us, I can tell you will make a fine addition to this school. However, I do want to ask a question or two regarding you and your quirk. How soon are you willing to let the world know about your quirk? You will be completely safe here on campus with our dorming system. However, I have heard of your reluctance to let people know. Izuku paused for a bit before answering, I told All Might about this, but I don't want people to go around treating me like a god. Can you imagine the sheer number of people who would want to see me if they knew what I could do? Nidzu paused. Yes, that made sense. Alright then, for the public activities we do here at UA, such as the sport festival, what would you like your official quirk to be? Jetstream. It's my favorite and I'm so close to learning how to fly with it. Izuku did not hesitate to give that as his answer, and he was truly close to flight. He could hover and glide for so long now it basically was flight, but he would get there. Alright then, I will have your quirk documentation changed to be Jetstream. Nidzu smiled at his new charge. So sorry, but one last thing. For the safety of your fellow students and staff, we need to know what quirks you have at the moment. Oh, that's no trouble at all. I kind of hit a roadblock at 15 quirks. My limit hasn't gone up for a while. I'm sitting at 10 currently, so I can take quirks whenever I need to and not go over my limit. I can safely go to about 13 quirks before I'll start really feeling the effects of overuse. The quirks I currently have are all in this notebook, which Izuku pulled from his backpack and handed it to Nidzu.
Quirks currently in my possession. All for one, emitter type quirk. Allows for the instant transmission of a quirk upon physical touch with the intended target. Overuse, too many quirks, or too much usage leads to a migraine from hell, and if pushed too far will cause the user to faint. Still need to figure what exactly is the cause of said drawback. Ultra sight, mutation type quirk. Changes eyes of the person who has it to a pure shade of black, passively improves the sight of its user, giving them 20/20 vision. Night vision functions in a different way to normal night vision. It just makes it look like a regular day versus making everything green like regular night vision. He can hold this one for 20 minutes 1 hour before it starts to hurt a bit. The previous user supposedly could keep this up for hours at a time. Thermal vision functions as regular thermal vision, turning his vision blue except for heat sources which get redder the hotter they are. Blacklight vision functions in the exact same way blacklight does as well. Radiation vision is his least used vision and will probably remain so due to the fact that Izuku wanted to be nowhere near any source of radiation. Zoom is incredibly useful, being able to see about 1 kilometer 3 kilometers out. Apparently the last user could see up to 5 kilometers out. I tried combining it with thermal once. I regretted that almost instantly, however, as it felt like my eyes were burning from the strain, but quirks are like muscles and I'll need to train so I can do that. After training this with another one of my quirks tempo, I can successfully handle the strain for around 5 seconds. X-ray vision. Dark vision. I need to find a better name for this one. It darkens the world around and causes living things to become a yellow silhouette. He has about 15-25 feet of range with this at the moment. I need to come up with a better name. Oh, I know, I'll call it dark vision. Jetstream, emitter type quirk. Allows the user to fire bursts of typhoon-level winds from their palms. With proper practice the quirk can be used to fly. This is by far my favorite quirk. The winds can reach up to 200 miles per hour with only 150 miles per hour being needed to lift the average weight person off the ground, and since Izuku is a child he needs much less for takeoff. It's unfortunate that Izuku can only make winds of around 110 miles per hour. He wanted to fly so badly. Overuse leads to the person feeling like they have been running for a very long time. He's really glad All Might helped him train his endurance, because I can hold the quirk on for a good 10 minutes at this point. The stronger the gust the faster you exhaust it. I can only hold 110 miles per hour gusts for around a minute, half an hour. His cooling quirk had really helped with that one at the moment. Combustion, emitter type quirk. Allows the user to manipulate any fire within a 30 feet 45 foot radius. It has almost no drawback and allows for free movement of the fire almost perfectly. The downside is there already has to be a fire, so at the moment it's pretty useless to him, but hopefully down the line he get a fire quirk, because combined with this one will give Izuku a ton of options. See below. Fire breath, mutation type quirk. Allows the user to breathe fire from their lungs that can reach upwards of 800 degrees Fahrenheit. The longer the user holds the fire, the more injured the throat of the user becomes. Almost completely negated to the next quirk listed. I am only held back by the amount of air in my lungs now. Honestly, with my skill set I could just pretend I was a fire user at this point. The quirk of his father Hisashi Midoriya, the only time Izuku broke his role and stole a quirk. Minor fire resistance, mutation type quirk. Grants the user the ability to withstand up to 600 degree temperatures comfortably. As long as I keep my fire lower than or at that temperature I will be fine, and can continually use my fire breath, and combustion works incredibly well when combined with the two. I am probably the worst nightmare for a fire quirk user to fight at this point. Silence, emitter type quirk. When activated the user becomes incapable of making any sound whatsoever. This includes speech, walking, etc. It literally erases sound from the person using it. Overuse leads to the person becoming deaf for a period of time. Overuse usually occurs at around 5 to 10 minutes. Izuku has no idea what causes it get used faster than normal sometimes. Maybe it's the amount of sound he makes while using the quirk. It is indeed the sound made by the user. I screamed at the mirror for like 2 minutes before the feeling of deafness hit me. Tempo, emitter type quirk. The user activates adrenaline in their body, which makes it appear as if the user has either doubled the speed at which time passes or halved the speed at which time passes for the next 5 seconds. The user's physical body is still only able to move at their normal speed during these 5 seconds, only the mind is able to keep up with the new speed. It essentially allows you to fight in slow-mo for the next 5 seconds, doubling a person's reaction time. I still haven't found a good use for the doubling of time part of the quirk. Using it for more than 5 seconds without waiting for the 10-minute 1-minute cooldown time results in a migraine similar to that of overusing all for one. Minor regeneration. Mutation/emitter type quirk. He was confused as to how to class this one, since it technically changes his body but it also doesn't have any physical properties, so he just went with both. The user must actively think about healing whichever part of his body he wishes to heal when trying to this quirk. It is not a passive ability. The process at which it does so is incredibly slow, and to restore entire parts of the body it usually takes around an entire day. Thankfully they had an example of this already, and Izuku didn't have to cut his arm off to find out, since apparently the previous user had lost an entire limb and had it back by the next day. The quirk consumes lipids to heal the body, meaning overuse can lead to malnourishment among other things. Molecular manipulation, emitter type quirk. Allows the user to control molecules but only as a function of increasing or decreasing their vibration speed. He can speed them up or down, causing the object to cool or heat rapidly. He mainly used it on himself to keep his breathing level via slowing down his own molecules and cooling himself down. Theoretically, he could melt a person or freeze their insides with this, but he has not and will not try that in the future.
Nizu had just finished reading the book. The boy took even better notes when he had time to properly study, it seems. Izuku, what is this part about taking your father's quirk? Oh shit, he said out loud before realizing that he hadn't just thought that. I forgot that was in there. I promise you it was warranted in the situation. I'm sure you all remember who the dragon is. He went around using his flame breath to murder and terrorize people. Turns out he was my father. I already told All Might this, but when he found out I was quirkless, he beat my mom and left. I hadn't seen him once until about 5 months ago. He came back to hurt me for ruining his reputation. It was then that I realized who he was. He couldn't be the scary villain he was when he had a quirkless child after all. I took it and took him to the police station anonymously after knocking him out. I'm so sorry I never told you, All Might, but it was really personal, and I didn't want to hurt my mom even more than she was already hurting. All Might was surprised the boy had kept something like that from him, but could he really blame the boy if it was self-defense against an active abuser? It's fine, my boy, just make sure you tell me in the future. Have you used your quirk ever besides that without us knowing? We need to know. He leveled a look at the boy as if to tell him that this was the moment to come clean. No, I promise I haven't. Not once, I swear. Izuku pleadingly, hoping this wouldn't ruin his chances. Nizu just looked at the boy for a bit. While I do not blame you for this situation since you were being actively attacked by a known murderer. However, I would like to let you know that the police have given you 3 chances and I will be counting this as one of your mistakes. Nizu looked at him disappointedly. I am not mad at your quirk usage. I'm sad you never thought you could tell us about such a situation. I would have thought you trusted at least All Might by now. Indeed, he was not angry at the boy, just sad he had thought he couldn't trust someone with that knowledge. Izuku was so angry at himself at that moment. Of course they wouldn't have cared, he literally had a provisional license and now he's down to only 2 chances left. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. I swear if I am forced to use my quirk outside of my specified bounds you will all be the first to hear it, Izuku said, bowing once more. Thanking his stars he still had a chance. Aizawa glared at him. Well, hopefully he's honest and won't do it again, he thought. But from what he'd heard, the boy was definitely acting in a rational manner there. You'll have detention with me for the first week due to illegal quirk usage. Other than that I have no complaints. Are we done with this meeting yet? Nizu simply nodded, adjourning the meeting. Outside the principal's office, All Might just pulled Izuku into a hug. Remember, my boy, you can come to me for anything. I do mean that. Izuku sobbing quietly. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. And with that a hellish 9 months passed for Momo. But she had done it. The beach was fully clean. She had never been so proud of herself. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the dank basement of a moderately stylish bar, a black gate opens and a child falls to the floor. A wispy black man in a suit walks in behind the child. I have collected the boy you asked for, sensei. The boy, to all his credit, was doing his best not to freak out, but when you get shoved through a portal and some kind of sentient cloud is talking, it would unnerve most people. But then a voice entered the child's brain. Calm yourself, child. I will not harm you if you speak to me truthfully. I shall know if you are lying though, and there's one thing I cannot tolerate. I'm sure you can understand what that thing is. The voice in his head chuckling, but a dark horrifying laugh, not to mention the fear this man radiates. He knew the threat was very real and quickly clammed up and nodded back to the figure. It was dark in here so he wasn't able to quite make the man out. Good. Now tell me your quirk. It allows you to create super sharp and strong teeth, yes? The boy nodded. Now then, I hear you were part of this second awakening of quirks, but that's not really the case, is it, child? How did you get your quirk? The boy was screaming internally. He knew he wasn't supposed to talk about this, he would get in so much trouble, but it's better than dying. There is an organization that helps the quirkless, like myself. It's called the National Foundation for Quirkless Individuals. They told me about a procedure that could potentially awaken a dormant quirk if I have one. I mean, who wouldn't jump at the chance? Every day I was bullied and beaten down for being quirkless. So I accepted and they put me under. When I wake up I can suddenly do this. He flexes his teeth. I swear that's all I know. The figure just smiled, or he thought they were smiling. Good child, I believe you. You may leave now, but I doubt you'll remember this. A portal appeared below the boy and he was gone. Sensei, that is 4th second awakening quirk user and the 3rd different organization for quirkless offering a surgery to grant quirks. Someone major has to be backing this. The wispy man pondered aloud. I know, Kurogiri. I think that this means an old project of mine succeeded. He laughed again. I almost forgot about it, if I'm being honest, as I started it over 150 years ago. This had been a very good development. Well, it's been a minute, as we all know. And by a minute I mean 6 months. To be honest, I stopped making videos due to the fact that my text-to-speech AI uses a lot of money and my views were rapidly going down, so I just felt like I was wasting my money. But as you can see, after 6 months I'm ready to try and give YouTube a second chance. So yeah, I hope you like the new voices, and yeah, I hope all of you have a wonderful day/night. Bye.